and watch me educate. Yeah, we been, could've started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. Do it for your kids, gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now. We need solo, we need...
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be interviewing someone you may or may not have heard of. She's a consultant, she's a coach, but now she's kind of in a different chapter in her life, and she's working with a company called DIVA, Dental Insurance Verification and Automation. We're going to learn a little bit about that, but more so, we're going to learn more about her as a person so you know who you're dealing with. Thanks for joining us, and Tonya, thank you for joining us in the studio.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure. So, Tonya, first of all, talk to us a little bit about your history, and just kind of talk to me about how you got into all of this to begin with.
Okay.
So it was my dream to be a teacher, and I was going to the same college that my aunt went to. She's a teacher, and my freshman year, Columbine happened, and I was like, no way do I want to be a teacher. So I was kind of lost, didn't know what I was going to do. This is like the mid-90s, and some friends of the family, he's a dentist, and they asked me to come in and sterilize instruments with them. And I said, sure, I can do that. I was a lifeguard. I was waiting to start my guarding job. And second day, he threw me in the chair, and I found this love for dentistry that I had no idea existed. So I changed my focus. I was going to go to dental hygiene school. So went and did my prereqs, started investigating dental hygiene school, and found out very quickly that is not for me. Hands off to all the hygienists, but I was not one. I needed variety. I like different things. And so I decided to enter an assisting program. Went and got my certificate in dental assisting and started assisting, and they called me the sponge, because I was never just happy with the way that it was. I wanted to find ways to find solutions and to be better. And I did everything I could. Well, one day we had a consultant come in. Boss had hired her. She came in, she handed me a book this thick and said, go do this. That is as much help as I got from the first consultant I ever encountered. And I was like, oh, well, forget these people. I cannot be around them. So I ended up leaving that job, moving back home to Southern Michigan, and got a job at a dental office. And lo and behold, in walks a dental consultant. And I was like, I got to leave this job. Like, no way, these consultant people are crazy. Well, that consultant, not only did she change my opinion of consultants, she moved me from being an assistant to the front desk, taught me how to run all the systems of the front desk, taught me how to manage a dental practice. And then I went to work for her as one of her coaches to train in her dental offices. And there's where my love for consulting and all of that was born. I then left and went to a pediatric office, and I started working in this pediatric startup, and I was coaching and training on the side, and found this love for pediatric dentistry. And my parents laughed at me because they're like, you don't even like kids. And I said, well, I just take money from their parents, you know? But that turned into a relationship where that doctor followed me to, I went consulting full time. We got bought by a bigger consulting company. Corporate consulting wasn't for me, and went back and helped grow this pediatric practice over 10 years. That we were one doctor, 6 chairs, and we grew to 3 doctors, 14 chairs. And then I decided to branch out on my own and started consulting full time on my own.
Oh, great overview. So take me back. Where did you grow up? What kind of childhood shaped the woman that you became?
So I grew up in a little town in Michigan. We're right on the Indiana border, a little town called Edwardsburg. And so I was a small town girl. I was afraid of the city. I liked small. I liked dynamic and comfortable. And my parents, neither one of them graduated from high school, both very successful individuals. They own their own business. So I just saw really hard work my whole life. But my parents were there for everything for us. They were always at every sporting event. You know, I was an athlete. I was a cheerleader, and I just, had a great time in school, and my parents were involved in all of that. They never ever said you can't be something. Now, my mom frowned at many of my life choices as an adult because I have never lived with a single regret. I have never wondered what if an opportunity presented itself in front of me, I took it, good, bad, or indifferent. And, but I always had wings to fly, but I also had a support system if something didn't work to help get me back on track.
So your mom was more upset rather than by the life choices, rather than the fact that you chose change over stability.
Yeah. My mom is one of those people that she doesn't ask a question she doesn't already know the answer to. And I am the person that would jump off the cliff and figure out how to land safely on the way down.
So have you always been drawn to leadership roles and problem solving, even as a kid? Or, is that something you developed later as you started seeing the issues involved in dentistry?
No, I would say that I always was like naturally a leader, natural problem solver. I'm the oldest of two. And yeah, I mean, I was a leader in school. I was the president of my class. I was on student council. I mean, as I would just naturally gravitate towards things where I just wanted to help. That has really been what I've done most of my career in my life. Everything came from not that I wanted, the recognition of doing things. I just wanted to help make situations better.
Gotcha. So I think I already know the answer to this one, but whenever I find someone who is fearlessly driven, which is how I would describe you, in general, there's some person in their life that poured belief into them and became their support network and recognized their potential before the rest of the world. Who was that for you?
That's hard. I've had lots of those people in my life, but I would probably say, outside of my mom, because she has always believed, that first consultant that I went to work for, her name is Jean St. Louis. She was Jean Warner at the time. Her and our vice president, Peggy McDonald, the two of them saw something in me that I didn't know existed, and they nurtured and brought that out of me. And remember, I was this small town girl, so I didn't dress the right way. I didn't say things the right way, but they never made me feel bad for those things. They just taught me a different way, and they never gave up on that belief.
So is there a core value that you bring from that small town girl upbringing that still guides the decisions that you make today?
Yeah. Integrity. That at the end of the day, that is all that I really have, is my integrity in all situations. And I've let it lead me and drive everything that I've done. Because that was really important to me. It didn't matter. I shouldn't say that. I learned that it didn't matter what other people thought of me, because that bothered me for a long time. But it was more of what I thought of myself. And so that integrity turned into that guiding principle.
I often reflect whenever we have these interviews. I try to find questions that'll get a person thinking, and thinking about themselves and thinking about the way they think. I often reflect on something I heard once and stuck with me, and I think you'll agree with it. Someone else's opinion of you is none of your damn business unless they share it.
Yeah, I didn't learn that until into my late 30s, early 40s. And Victoria Peterson was the person.
I know Vicky very well.
I love her. She is in my second act of life, I guess. Her, Vanessa Emerson, and Manal Sampat are three people that really I found this something inside of me. It was back in 2019, and that I didn't know existed. But Vicky, we had to do an exercise, and you had to walk up to somebody and say, hi, my name is Tonya, and I don't care if you like me. And that was the most liberating exercise I've ever done in my entire life, because my whole life was full of what people thought of me. And how do I be the person I really want to be, but not care about what other people's opinions are? And then,
Just
I
do the
learned a
right
little
thing.
late. It didn't matter.
Yeah, just do the right thing.
Yeah.
So was this with PDA?
No, I was going to Dental Intel's Mastery Summit, and Manal, Vanessa, and Victoria were putting on a free event if you wanted to be a speaker. And I was like, I think that's my next phase. I need to become a speaker. And so this one day free event was this pivot in my life. And one of my best friends, still to this day, she laughs at me that she can't believe that I will get up and speak in front of people, because I choose to. Because in high school, when we had to speak, I just stood in front of the class and laughed because I was so nervous I couldn't do anything. So
I can totally see that. It still bubbles up in you every now and then. So we've kind of covered a little bit about how you first stepped into the dental world and your first roles in practice and how you grew from there. But when did you realize that the real problems in dentistry weren't actually clinical, that they were operational and cultural?
I always knew in everything that I learned that the clinical was the easy side of things. It was all the other things, money, how was insurance going to pay for this? All these other things that were like, why is that so important when this is your oral health? And the same things happened over and over in my own experiences and my practices. Then when I started training in other practices, when I learned what people didn't know, I was very fortunate that I started in good practices that I learned from, because others didn't have that. I mean, the amount of fraud that I saw, and it's unintentional because people didn't know that they were doing that, but yet it happened every day. So I would say when I started coaching and training, which was back in 2004, is when I really started seeing, and that was before that all the PPO were starting to come out. That didn't really happen until the crash, and there wasn't that many networks. I mean, a lot of offices were fee for service back then. And so you could kind of push that under the table a little bit, because, we were teaching people, well, here's where your benefit is, and this is how it's going to cover. It wasn't how it's morphed into this insurance driven environment today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely a different world.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is a universal truth, no matter where you are in your career, no matter where you are in the office, what your role is, dentistry can be brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to share with me a time where you faced burnout or you felt unseen, and how you dealt with that, and what you took from it that made you grow.
So I have to say, I'm not sure I ever felt unseen in a practice because of my drive and my nature, but burnout was real. And I had kids late in life. So for the longest time, the practice was my baby. So I could devote all this time to whatever practice I was working in or my life and what I was doing. And then I had kids, and I thought, I'm Superwoman. I have no ceiling. Well, I found out there was a ceiling, and it was far lower than I thought it was. And so what I experienced, that was in my late 30s, and what a lot of people face in their mid-20s in dentistry already. And being a parent, being a provider in your work, in your practice, or being a key person, and there's not enough hours in the day. And so I faced that. I was miserable. I've been very fortunate. I have not worked many days in my life because I love what I do. And over that period of a couple of years, it was like trying to get out of bed and go to work was miserable for me. And I didn't recognize it as burnout at the time. We weren't talking about that then. For me, it was like I was going through the motions because it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore, but it was easy and it was comfortable. But then again, it really wasn't easy and comfortable because I was miserable. And I ended up leaving and decided I really needed to spread my wings and fly. And I decided that I was going to coach and consult full time. So it was a very scary leap. And was it the right time? No. You know, did I pay prices for that? Yeah. But for me, it was like, I can figure the rest of this out. I wanted to be happy. I didn't want to be that miserable person. And we see that in dentistry all the time, that people are stuck. And it's like, if you feel stuck and you're not searching for another way, then, you know, you're probably the toxic one on the team. And I have to say, for as much as I teach that in practices, I was the toxic person and I couldn't see it. I had no clue it was me.
You know, I have a red flag. Whenever a person comes into a dental practice to interview and they say, I hate drama, they're usually the one causing it.
Right?
So we all know, you know, no matter where we are in life or what we do, that overcoming inertia, maintaining trajectory, and targeting in on your course can be difficult. Was there a point, a turning point, an inflection point where the bottom just fell out? You had difficulty or a setback, and you had a moment where you just said, I'm done, where you almost quit. What pulled you from that, and what did you learn from it?
So after going to that event and meeting Vanessa Emerson and Victoria Peterson and Manal Sampat, COVID hit. And like all of us, you know, in dentistry literally got shut down in a day. And the length was unknown. And I lost all of my consulting clients. And I had been building. I was doing very well. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I was panicking. I'm looking like maybe I should switch to medical and I should go work someplace else. How am I going to take care of my family? And I called Vanessa Emerson and was talking to her, and she had become a mentor of mine. And she said to me, she said, Tonya, she said, sometimes when the road curves, you have to decide, are you going to curve with it or are you going to fly off the edge? And that really resonated with me. And it was like, yeah, I can do this. Like, I've got way more skill sets than just consulting. And so I pivoted and I started a billing company. And
I've been there.
Yeah, not my fave. But, you know, at the time, that's what the world needed. Dentists had no clue. Nobody wanted to come to work. We weren't set up to work remotely at all. I mean, I had always consulted by going on site. I'd never done Zoom meetings or Zoom trainings. And all of a sudden, when you're faced with adversity, what are you going to do? You going to bend with the road or are you going to fly off the edge? So I bent, and it helped me move forward. Was it the forever thing? No. But it helped me realize I could rely on myself. You know, I'm very self-sufficient. I have lots of skills that I can do, and how can I help others? So then I just started pushing. I did online webinars. I did free webinars for doctors. I got invited to do webinars for DI, and I did some for ADOM, and you know, it was just amazing at the time, and how much the community just kind of rallied together and said, okay, we have this time. What can we do to teach people? And that's what we did. And so yeah, that was a huge point for me to learn that I can do hard things.
You know, I think COVID was an inflection point for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So you've been in the studio. For those of you who haven't, this may not make much sense, but I had never picked up a camera in my life until 2020.
Wow.
I had to conduct some interviews with the president of the ADA and some of the PAC members and discuss what was happening actually behind the scenes with COVID and, get dentists good information because there was so much misinformation flying around. And that was actually the first time I got involved in any kind of videography or podcasting or Zoom meetings or what have you. So what kind of skill, is there one particular skill you picked up during that time that you think you never would have had previously?
I think probably the best skill that I picked up was, again, pivoting in saying it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to get your voice out there. How can you help people? Again, it just went back to that core value of mine. I just want to help. How do I help people? And I had to learn a new way to help people. It wasn't the same old way that I was used to, but it still worked.
Yeah, it's funny. The last interview I did, something that the guest said really struck me. She looked at me and she said, I was talking to her about disappointments and things that had gone wrong, maybe have changed her trajectory. And she looked at me and she smiled and she said, "My pivot game is strong."
I love it.
So was there a turning point, a moment of inflection where it just really, life put a foot in your butt and pushed you from being an employee to a leader that kind of laid out this trajectory, like a specific moment that you remember?
I had always had this goal of being an entrepreneur. I really wanted to work for myself because I felt that when I worked for other people that they weren't always doing the things that I felt were in the best interest of the practice or doing what was in the best interest of the team and things of that nature. So that part had always been with me. Probably my biggest pivot after all of the COVID and everything is I really wanted to niche down to only helping pediatric dentists if I was going to coach and consult. And that was a huge leap of faith because obviously there's far less pediatric dentists than there are general dentists out there. And how did I do it? Because I had been out of the general point for so long, implants, all on fours, all this dentistry. It was not anything I knew anymore. And I've always been, if I'm not the best, I shouldn't be helping you. And I knew in pediatric dentistry, I was working with pediatric startups and I could take them to over $1 million in collections year 2 in a startup situation. I knew I was good at those things. So that was the scary point for me that I really wanted to pivot and move to just pedo. And I never fully did it. I was close. And, but then, the world dentistry is just changing so much. And there's so many coaches and consultants out there that are amazing. But then there's other people out there that see a way to make fast money and they don't deliver. And unfortunately, dentists have been hit by all sorts of things. And so it's hard. It is hard to be that person that you have to, you only get to eat what you kill, so to speak. That sounds terrible.
I love that phrase. It honestly, it's something I tell all of my employees.
Yeah, it's true. It is so true. And then I would try to set things up from my integral standpoint. And I had to remember that not every client had the same integrity level that I did or the teams did. And so it was just like, what am I going to do? Do I want to keep going forward in this path? It's hard. I've got little kids and they hate me traveling. What am I going to do? And then DIVA called. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. It was just kind of like this, fate put it together. I had been following, Manuel and the robots for years. I had begged him multiple times for just please give me a canned robot that I can use in all my practices. I knew that it was the future. And I got the call one day that said, hey, we need somebody. What do you think? And I was like, yes, I'm in. So, and it's a direction I never thought I would have went in, but I knew I could pivot and I knew I could help.
So in the interest of full disclosure, per the FCC guidelines, I own a part of DIVA. I'm actually the CEO. But Manuel owns Dental Robot, which is what we use to create our clients in DIVA. So I want to ask you, one of the things that I think is a problem today. I think social media is great for many things, but it's also truly terrible whenever it comes to the human condition. Things we're prone to that it exacerbates, for good or ill. One of those problems is that everyone posts their highlight reels. They tend to either be the kind of person who posts only their failures and cries and whines, or they post their highlight reels. So there's no slice of real life out there.
Right.
So I want you to share a failure that you've had that ended up unlocking something in you that you used to create those highlight reels that you used, in your life.
Let's see. Failure. I've had several of those.
Haven't we all?
I think the first was when I first branched out into consulting, and I had this vision of, I never wanted to be a one-man band consultant. I wanted a team of people because I felt that when you can bring in the skills and knowledge of a team, you can help so much more than just what one person. In fact, I would tell my clients, if you meet one person who says, oh, I can do that for you, I can do your marketing, I can do this, I can do that, like run. Because nobody has that much knowledge in that many places.
Oh, they can do it, but can they do it well?
Well, this is true. Yes. Could they actually deliver the result that you wanted? And so I had built this. I had 7 people blindly follow me on a mission. I didn't have my first client, and they followed me. The problem was that I had it set up to where I gave them everything. Like I would close the clients. I was doing the training. So at this point, I'm the main consultant because I'm the only one who's Well, that wasn't true. I had another person who had consulted with me. We kind of grew up in consulting together. And, but I am doing all these things and I'm failing at all of them because I couldn't just let them go because they didn't have the knowledge, and how was I going to train them? So I had this vision, but I really hadn't thought that vision through very well. And at the end of the day, all I was doing was killing myself and paying people that really weren't helping put in the effort that I thought that they naturally were going to do because I didn't set the right expectation. No fault of theirs. I didn't say, here's what I expect because I kind of thought, well, they should know. And they didn't know. And so I think that that's one thing that I've really tried to follow with all my clients and everything going forward. Even with DIVA, it's like, what expectation am I putting down to make sure that we all understand? I call them bumpers, that we understand the bumpers of where we're going to end up at. So that way that I'm not talking about something here and somebody's thinking that we're way over here in what we're going to deliver, or what we're going to do, or how I'm going to teach them, or whatever the case may be. So that ended up, I don't want to say that blew up in my face, that consulting company, but that all rolled into when COVID came, so then it just exacerbated the situation. So when I came out of that, I went in a different direction. But I've been trying for years to figure out like because I wasn't true to what I really, really wanted for myself. So I would say that, yeah, I didn't follow my gut. I didn't follow what it was I really wanted to do. And when it failed, I just pivoted in a different direction, partly because of COVID, partly because it's like, well, this makes more sense. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't what I wanted. And I've been searching for that for a while.
You know, I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks of entrepreneurship is delegation. And the reason is that most people don't understand that the absolute best ROI you're going to get on something that you delegate is 80% of your efforts. And I think that happens in practices a lot too.
Agree.
So when you started helping practices, I know that whenever I coach dentists and when people come to me with their problems in dentistry, I feel like I hear the same litany of things again and again and again. And I think most of them is because people have dreams rather than goals. A goal is an idea that you've actually set forth steps to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
A dream is kind of nebulous, and it's ever changing, depending upon the environment you're in at that time, or, what an epiphany you might have or how you're feeling. And I notice it's the same problems over and over.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you find? What problem did you see over and over in dental practices?
So I am a systems and processes consultant at my core. And so the overall issues that I would see is it was either the team dynamic, we need new patients, or it was this burnout culture, situation. And so one thing, call it a gift, I don't know, but I love numbers. I have green eyes, and when I start looking at numbers, they make my eyes sparkle because I get so excited. So with different companies out there, different programs, to be able to go in and see KPIs that it would take me hours to figure out these, but I could do it. I mean, I can, I would tell people, well, if I can't get it the easy way, I'll get it the hard way. And the numbers would tell me a story in the practice. And the story was always the same. Your retention is terrible and you're not maximizing what you have. And it's because everybody would try to reinvent the wheel over and over and over again. But the core of the issue existed. We just weren't doing the work. And a lot of dentists, as a clinician, you can see the value that your team brings to you. Your hygienists, they're producers. You can see that production when you look at it at the end of the day. Your assistants, they sat by your side. They help do all of those things. But at the front desk, it's really hard to see what do they bring to the table. And you went to school, you went to school to be a clinician. You didn't go to school to learn how to run a dental business. And so a lot of times we hire people that have no clue what they're doing. Worst, we hired people who think they know what they're doing and they're doing it wrong because most of us learned by what the last person taught us to do. And if you were originally taught by somebody who actually knew what they were doing, then great, you probably had a really good idea. It wasn't until late in my dental career that I even learned about ADOM, that there was a source out there to even help the desk. And so I think that a lot of times in offices that I would walk in to help, it was everybody thinks that the problem is clinical, but the problem really lies at the desk. It's where I would spend the bulk of my time. And I do have a clinical background because I was a dental assistant first, but it begins and ends there. People don't realize from that very first phone call that there's your impression coming in, how you answer these questions, that age-old question of, do you take my insurance? And that is a make or break in dental practices. And there's so many tools and so much technology out there now that you can hear what people are saying on the phone. But who has time to listen into all of that? We are all running. I call it running with our butts on fire, really going with roller skates, whatever the case may be. And who has time to work on their practice? And yet that's what we desperately need. You can't be an employee in your own business all of the time. You have to work that business. And I think that's a huge missing piece so that's what I would see over and over and over again. Sometimes it was conscious neglect. Sometimes it's just simply a, you don't know what you don't know situation. And then, then you would have the other nefarious things that came out of it where, it wasn't until somebody embezzled that it pushed you into getting help. Or, I've dealt with a lot of situations where people are like, they want help until they realize, oh, wait a minute, she's going to make me change. Mm-hmm. So I got to get rid of her now because I'm not the problem. And it's like, but you are, it's the lack of what you're doing. So that's what I have found over and over in dental practices.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. A lot to unpack in that answer. So whenever I teach dentists about KPI, here's what I tell them. If you have someone who tells you to follow a bunch of numbers and to pull your P&Ls, but they don't tell you how you make decisions based on those, then there's a problem. Mm-hmm. All KPI serve one master KPI. I tell dentists what you need to do is you need to understand what that master KPI is, what the main things that flow into that KPI are, and how each one of those is informed by different statistics within your practice. For instance, the equation I use is number of patients times average transaction value per visit times percent collected minus overhead equals net profits. And the king, or the one ring of all of that, I know you like fantasy, so I'm going there.
I do.
So the one ring is net profit, and all other statistics merely inform as to what is going on with your net profit and why. So the difficulty there is that most dentists don't realize that net profit is the ultimate goal of any business. They also don't realize that if you're a practice owner instead of an associate, you're wearing 3 hats. You've got father, son, mother, daughter, cousin, what have you. You've got CEO, and you've got doctor. Mm-hmm. So I think something that's really beneficial, and I want you to speak on this for a little while, just kind of explore the idea. I have them write what I call their perfect scene or their ideal scene. And I tell them, I want you to put on your CEO hat. Maybe the first time you've ever worn it, but I want you to think as a business owner and not as a doctor and not as a parent or whatever. And I want you to write down what that perfect day looks like from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to sleep at night. All right, now I want you to put on your clinician hat. I want you to do the same thing. Now I want you to put on your personal hat. I want you to do the same thing. And that's how we make a 5-year plan. We start backwards from that, and we build an actual plan to get there. And so these things stop being dreams and vague notions, and they become something that's solid. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I think probably one of the hardest things for dentists that I've encountered is they can't think of what that perfect day looks like because they're so stuck in what they're doing right now. They wouldn't know what it looked like to say, okay, I can switch gears for a day and I can do this. so I love that approach to it. My approach is a little bit different in the way I break down into more bite-sized pieces, again, because I have systems and processes.
We do. But
Well, I mean,
that's where it has to start.
Well, yeah. And I've never written that big plan because I'm always jumping into the pieces that are, so I love that idea of doing it that way. And making them think at that level.
So one of the other things I always tell them is that your P&L is not where the answers will be. It's where the answers were. Because a P&L is a trailing indicator. It's not a leading indicator. Mm-hmm. So your cash flow statement really is much more important whenever you're looking at your practice's health. Your P&L just tells you where you've screwed up previously so that you can go back and fix it. But if you're not keeping good records so that you can look and say, okay, what was the decision tree? Okay, this bad thing happened. Our statistics were going up, and then all of a sudden they were horizontal. Anything, folks, that is not growing is dying. Anything that is not growing is dying. Mm-hmm. Make no mistake. And so if you are going up, then, you're doing something well. You need to say, what decision did we make based on what problem we had that gave this outcome? And you need to continue doing that thing. But whenever you see things level off or you see things dip down or go down very, very dramatically, you need to, first of all, you need to make sure your systems are being followed. And if they're not being followed, maybe that's the problem. Mm-hmm. And if they are being followed, maybe the system is the problem. I know you deal with this kind of stuff a lot. What do you think the biggest misunderstanding dentists have about team dynamics and systemization are?
I need an office manager. I think...
Well, they don't know what an office manager is.
They have no clue what an office manager is. And for most people, it's a title and a pay raise because you're good at collecting money. But there's no one is training them. How do you lead people? How do you manage people? How do you empower your team? Let's face it. There is a lot of mean girl activity that goes on. And I say girl because it's still predominantly women in the support positions in a practice. In there, more men are getting involved in that now, which is great to see. We don't make decisions as a manager as to what's the best for the practice. It's what's the best for me and my friends. And it kills dental practices. Yet, for some reason, every dentist thinks they have to have an office manager. And so one thing that I do, especially when I encounter startup practices, I work with a lot of startup practices, and they'll say to me, well, I need to hire an office manager. You can't afford an office manager. You don't have your first patient. So no, that's not what you need. And so I like to have my doctors learn how to be their own office manager. So when it comes time to hire somebody, they know exactly how to empower them. They know what they're facing amongst the other team, and they can help get them the resources that they need to teach them what they need to know to actually manage a practice. Because most office managers they're glorified financial coordinators.
Well, let me float an idea to you and see what your thoughts are on it. Most dentists confuse, and it's an act of desperation, mm-hmm. because they have front desk who say, I'm so busy, I need an additional front desk. Or they say they have assistants that say, I'm always running around, I need some help, or what have you. And they confuse a lack of systemization for productivity or busyness. And it's a very flawed perception. So they try to fill that need by hiring more people and then throwing them into the same lack of systems.
Yep.
What they really truly need, first of all, is systemization. And when most people say office manager, they really mean team lead. Mm-hmm. And there should be 3 or 4 team leads on your team, and no leader, period, should be supervising more than 5 to 7 people. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. And I love to put team leads in practices, you know.
And a lot less expensive than a real office manager too, because a real office manager, you're looking at paying 75, 80, 100 grand a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when you have a team lead, I feel, and I like department leads, so that way every department gets a voice. And
has someone where the buck stops.
Yep. And they understand what their department is facing against the rest of the practice too. And they bring in a different point of view. I think sometimes when you have one person, especially in big practices, you have one person who's leading, well, they lose perspective. And I also think that when you have worked for a practice for a long time, because that's the other person, like, well, they've been here the longest, so they should be the manager. Just because we've been there a long time doesn't mean our skills increased. One of my favorite things is when people would say, well, I've been in dentistry for 20 years. Well, do you have 20 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience that you've repeated 20 times?
Did you steal that from me?
No.
Did you know I tell dentists that all the time?
No.
I've practiced for 25 years. Have you practiced for 25 years? Have you practiced 1 year 25 times?
Exactly. And most people have practiced 1 year 25 times.
And guys, don't take this as an attack. It
No.
really isn't, because we're trying to get down to the meat on the bone here, which is what things do you need to change? Because honestly, as leaders, that's our most potent skill, is being dynamic and having a strong pivot game.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, you have to be introspective enough to say, what am I contributing here? You know, and that thing they're contributing might be a lack of SOPs.
Yeah.
You know, and SOPs should be, in my opinion, written on a 6th grade level. You know, if you can have a 6th grader come in and read it and they know exactly what you want them to do, then that SOP is written correctly. And the reason for that, for me, is, hey, my front desk is out sick. My assistant needs to do double duty. You know, how much worse is that if they have no idea what they're doing, or they half remember it because they did it once or twice,
Mm-hmm.
or they were never fully trained and didn't really pay attention because they were like, well, really isn't my job, right? So talk to me a little bit about hatting, if you're familiar.
Like putting people on different hats on. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Defining roles and defining expectations.
So I may have a very different viewpoint on this than others. And I am a huge fan of people need to be responsible for something, but they don't have to always be the person who does it. So like cross-training so that we can help. I hate the phrase, that's not my job. You know what? You're here, you're on the clock, and you're getting paid. Your job is whatever I ask you to do that day. It just astonishes me how many doctors will listen to somebody say that and they're like, well, they're not going to do that. And it's like, you're paying them. They're here. Do it. So I think hats are important. I think for accountability is so lost in dental offices. We don't hold people accountable.
Can you take a step back and define what a hat is so that people know?
Sure. So if you're putting a hat on in a role, like right now, I'm going to be, maybe I'm in the RCM and that's not my job, but I'm putting that hat on because I'm going to lead that dynamic in the office, or I'm going to lead that system in the office to make sure it gets done, you know, but I don't have to play every piece of that role either. Sometimes it's a hat of I'm the leader. Today I am leading my department, and I'm, other days my hat may be I need to fill in. You know, I'm going to fill in for somebody else within the office. That's what a hat means to me in terms of where am I going to be that day? What role am I going to fulfill within that office?
Awesome. Let's kind of unpack some of the stuff that we talked about there. And I'd love for people to hear your viewpoint on these things. And first of all, if you had a recipe book, because my belief is that dentistry is special, but your practice is not a special little snowflake. It's a business. All businesses run by the same rules. Now, there may be cultural differences in your office. There may be different dreams and different goals in your office, but all businesses perform by the same rules. So if you had a recipe book and you could write down the 5-minute microwave brownie version of it, what would that look like?
Oh, my 5-minute micro, and I'm a good baker too. So I would say that if you're putting something into place, and I'm going to take the pieces of, I've got my team, I've got my systems and processes, I've got my technology, and I'm going to take all of those things and I'm going to utilize it to their capabilities, because instead of fitting everything into a box, let me take everything out and figure out, how can I use them more effectively? Because my biggest proponent of this whole recipe is for my patients. How do I take care of those patients to get them to come back? I mean, this is a relationship game that we're in dentistry now. The tides have changed. It's not about prices because everybody's in network and we're operating on these fee schedules and everything else. How do you build relationships with those patients? And you as the dentist, as the business owner, can't be everything to everybody. You're not the only thing to those patients. How do I bring out everything in the rest of my pieces in order to give them the very best experiences possible? That's my recipe.
You make a point there that I think is very pertinent and timely. It is a relationship and an experience game. Now, a lot of people, as reimbursement rates are decreasing and it's getting much more competitive, and these dentists who are PPO dentists, they're looking around and they're like, well, the fee-for-service guy's doing so well, I should go fee-for-service. And guys, if you know me, you know I'm a huge advocate of being fee-for-service. But the thing I think that most people miss is the reason that those dentists are doing well as fee-for-service is that the same skill set is necessary in fee-for-service as is now becoming necessary simply to survive as a dentist. And that is being able to form those relationships very, very quickly. And I teach a formula for how you have a conversation that forms a relationship within 5 minutes of meeting a person. And it's really not hard. It just all begins at actually giving a flying flip about that person as an individual.
Yeah.
So looking back at your brownie recipe, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about systems, though. And I think it's one of those buzzwords that gets thrown out a lot and it gets a lot of lip service, but not the attention it deserves, because everyone tells someone you've got to systemize your practice, but they don't go in depth. And I'd like to have a discussion about that. And I'll talk about some of the things I did in my practices. And I want you to talk about what it is you recommend for systemization. So talk about what you did and what you do in practices first and what you recommend. I mean,
Okay.
you're kind of, you've taken off your consulting hat now, but I don't want that knowledge to be lost. So
So I'm very in the weeds. And I think that I'm super in the weeds because I've done these systems before. And I will tell you, I teach the same systems that I have used for 25 years because they work. So I have to take that back to my very first mentor teacher who taught me those things. And hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So one of the things that has to happen in practices is you have to look at what is an efficient use of your time and an effective use of your time, and what are your time wasters. If you have a patient communication program that is texting and emailing your patients, it is 100% waste of time to call them to confirm. My favorite is most offices call to confirm before the final text message goes out to confirm. So, looking at the little nuances, that's a waste of your time. Stop, teaching your patients that they can cancel and change that appointment at the end. Instead, teach them that an appointment's a confirmation when they make it.
A reservation.
A reservation. Yes, I like that. And that we expect to see them. I use this all the time. Ladies, we don't miss hair appointments, right? Because it's going to take 6 weeks to get in. So tell me, how is it that getting your hair done is more important than your oral health? But every single day we see that in offices, that it's like, oh, I can't come today. The sun is shining and I just want to be outside today. So, and what happens is they go, oh, okay, when do you want to come back? I have an appointment tomorrow. What did I just teach them? I taught them that, well, I can change my appointment and I can get back in tomorrow. It's like no big deal. They're killing themselves. On the RCM side of things, putting in the benefits the right way and estimating how much a patient is going to owe and being able to confidently have that conversation is hard. And so we don't do it. We tell them we'll send a pre-D. We schedule them for an appointment. My favorite is you schedule them for appointment next week. The pre-D is going to take a month. And there's no guarantees in there. So we're trying to take these shortcuts to get to our goals. And that's a system, right? I mean, it's a system to send a pre-D. People are like, oh yeah, we have systems.
But do you have good systems?
Effective systems.
A pre-D is a waste of time unless you're a Medicaid office.
And that's only if you need a pre-authorization. You have to understand. You have to understand, and you have to take the time to teach your team those things.
So one of the things I talk about a lot is the 80-20 rule. Mm-hmm. And it applies to everything. It can be used in a variety of different ways. But the way I talk about it so that people really get it is that there are levers and there are dials, right? So I was talking to a dentist the other day, and he was at I believe, 10% overhead in his practice for supplies and for labs, which is good. 7 to 9% is ideal, right? Mm-hmm. And so I told him, I said, okay, well, what are your new patient numbers? Or your patient numbers, rather. How many visits a day? Well, I see about 7 patients personally a day, and my hygienist sees. And so, well, let's just look at one thing at a time. Holistically, we're going to go back and we're going to look at total visits. But okay, so what is your profit on each patient that you see? What's your average value of visit? And he said, well, I don't know. I said, okay, well, how much do you produce each day personally? Okay, well, let's divide that by 7. That is your, average, average visit. Okay, so could you see 10 patients in a day? He says, oh yeah, easily. I said, is it something you could sustain forever? Okay, what about 15? Well, I could do that for a while, but I couldn't really sustain it. So I said, okay, let's look at 10. All right. Assuming your practice produces $1 million a year, a 1% cost on your materials and on your lab fees is going to net you $100,000 in the entire year. I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I said, if you see 3 patients a day more, how many weeks do you work? He said, well, I work 30. I said, all right, so that's 90 patients. All right, and you said that your average value per hour in the practice, or average value per patient, is about $500. All right, so $1,500 per day times 90 times 4 for the number of days a week you work. And so I made him sit there and do the math. And he goes, wow, that's a lot more. And I said, so there is an asymptotic relationship, meaning it becomes more and more difficult whenever you are applying effort to something that is close to perfect as opposed to something that is far from perfect. A lot more effort gets into fixing that nearly perfect thing than goes into fixing something that's pretty messed up to begin with. So that patient number, that's a lever. You throw that lever and all of a sudden you're making a lot more money. That's 20% effort for 80% outcome. Mm-hmm. But dials are the opposite. It's 80% effort for 20% outcome. And I think the dentists don't think about these things because they think about they think about their supplies, mm-hmm. because who's using them? The dentist is, right? but they don't think about all of those other factors. Like I said, my golden KPIs that go into making a practice function.
Mm-hmm.
What is a piece of advice like that you can give to dentists?
So when I look at, because pediatrics is a little different in the way, because we don't have the luxury of choosing cosmetic dentistry or how are you going to build that perfect day? But there still is an art to scheduling. And I teach people that scheduling is not see hole, fill hole. It is scheduled with purpose. And you can make increases just like what you're explaining, just by changing the way that you schedule. But I talk to a lot of dentists and they don't even know what their perfect day looks like. Like what would it be? And so when I try to put things into place, because a lot of times in pediatrics, it's like there's 6 chairs and we just throw people in as we can get them in. And it's just kind of a free for all. But when you can put a form of structure to that schedule and what you can turn around in that. So that's where I look at for them. How can I take, without making massive like changes, but I can switch some things around just a little bit for them and have major impact for them to see. So my approach a little bit different than like the formulas that you put together. Outcome very, very similar in that.
So talk to me about block scheduling.
I love block scheduling.
Me too.
So, years ago, again, late 90s, early 2000s, I heard the whole rock, sand, water, that I personally use high, medium, and low if I'm helping a general practice. And one thing I do a little bit differently in block scheduling is I don't use the procedures per se as I use the dollar amounts of the appointment.
That's the exact same thing I did.
Awesome. We think so much alike.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that's why this has been a hard conversation, because I'm like, I want to say this, but I know she could say it,
That's okay. I think we feed off of each other too. But I take the dollar amount of the appointment. So it's like, what do I need my daily goal to be? I need the doctor to produce, let's say, $6,000 a day. Okay, well then I'm going to put 3 blocks in there worth $1,500. And then so I can get to the bulk of my goal on my high production. And then I know my medium is going to fill in the blanks. I call it, we're going to shoot for the moon. And if we miss, we're going to land on the stars. So I help teach them to actually overproduce what they want. And when I teach it too, here's where I use gross and net, because it's really hard. Most of the PMSs, you're not able to see net. More are coming out now. There's a couple that you can do it with, but most you've got to see it in gross. So I figure out what's our gross production, because we're going to schedule based on that gross production. So when we collect, we're collecting what we want to have that increase. And doctors, if they, a lot of them are like, oh, I'd love to put a bonus system in place or whatever. Well, I'm going to build that in so that they're capable of attaining that bonus system if the team works to do the system the way that it should be. Then there could be a reward in it too for them. So, but it's really understanding like your time. I say this all the time. Doctors have delusions of grandeur at how fast they are at doing something. The other side of things is, well, they only think of their time and they don't think about how long does it take to see the patient, how long, like the X's and the slashes, the programs that still allow you to put that stuff in.
No one uses that.
Nobody uses, and it's so
Explain it real
important.
quick, because I think that's a really important point that you bring up there.
So some have modified ways to use it, so it is possible in some of those PMSs, but slashes are assistant time, X's are doctor's time. In my perfect day, doctor would have one solid line of X's going down, and I don't care how much time the assistants take around that, because I've maximized the doctor's time, because doctor's producing. So if I'm in a state where assistants can place restorations in that, then I use the same premises. I just schedule a doctor out of more chairs. Because if you can place fillings, typically 2 chairs isn't going to be enough. You need 3 in order to really maximize your doctor, especially when they're fast as well. And, doctors will look and go, oh, but then I got to hire somebody else, the overhead. And it's like, let's go back to how much is that average patient per hour? You're still getting that revenue. Even with that extra team member, you're making way above what you need to with it. So it's maximizing doctor's time, and that's where it's important. But you have to know how long your doctor takes. Time studies is something we don't do enough in dentistry to see. Or the flip side of it, I've had people that, they have this beautiful CEREC machine or an E4D or whatever. This is back a little in the older days because now the labs can do so much, and it takes them 3 hours to do a crown. Well, guess what? Don't use that machine because you're killing yourself. $300 for something you're going to get, or 3 hours for something for less than $1,000. You're killing yourself. You're never going to hit your goals.
Unless, of course, you've got an auxiliary who's trained in actually doing all of that work. And all you have to do is say, yep, that looks good. So one of the things I did whenever I started my practice, I don't know if you're familiar with what I did in my practice, but I graduated in 2012 and I was able to exit in 2020. I sold my practice February 19th, right before COVID destroyed the world. But I was, out of 3 chairs, I was collecting $1.58 million a year, working 3 days a week. Wow. And this is one of the reasons I did that. Mm-hmm. The first day I was in practice, I hired someone off the street. They had no dental knowledge at all because it wasn't needed. Mm-hmm. And I said, I want you to take this stopwatch. And whenever I go into an operatory, I'm going to tell you start. And whenever I leave, I'm going to tell you stop. Then I'm going to tell you what the procedure was. Your entire job is just to put those things down on a piece of paper, and then we're going to put them into a spreadsheet. And once we've got them in the spreadsheet, I'll take over doing all of that. Mm-hmm. Now, kind of the deal is that this lady wanted to work in dentistry. And so I said, as part of the perks of this, little minimum wage job you've got here, we will train you, because in Texas you can train over 1 year for someone to do x-rays and everything else without them being certified. I said, we will train you, and then I will pay for your certifications, and you can become assistant. So we did that, and then I knew exactly how long it took me to do every procedure. Now, again, this is probably one of those things that when you first start your practice, this is a lever. Mm-hmm. It is not a dial. But later on, you're going to find that you plateau in your productivity. And it took me about 3 years. And at 3 years, I said, I need to hire someone else to do this again. So at 3 years, all of a sudden, my times were different. But I used those times so that I could block schedule because I knew exactly what my time was. Yep. And by doing that, and also having them time when the assistant got in and how long things took, other things became really obvious in the practice that I would never have seen. And for instance, my assistants would go in and, hi, Miss Smith, how are you doing? Today we're going to be working on tooth number 3. Dr. Huff-Power is going to be doing a crown right there. And do you have any questions? Oh, okay. Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take your blood pressure now. Oh, how have you been doing? Blah, 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 blah. And I realized they weren't working efficiently because they weren't nesting things. And so I actually was able to take those appointments and go into the room with them and say, okay, do this now, do this now, do this now, do this now. Okay, fantastic. And for those of you who are interested on a crown prep, the way that you do that is the moment you enter the room, you have to write macros for your notes. The moment you enter the room as an assistant, you click Start Macro. That macro is going to say what tooth you're working on, why are you working on the tooth, what is the causative agent, what is your diagnosis, and what is your treatment plan. So we're going to be doing a crown because the tooth is fractured on mesial cusp. And all of that was a drop-down menu because I just sat and I thought very deeply after work, what all do I do? Then after that, it says patient's shade was, patient's blood pressure, patient's pulse. So I had them trained. Once they start that note and they enter the first data, they have already said, hey, Miss Smith, I'm going to take your blood pressure, and while that runs, I'm going to make a couple of notes in the computer if you don't mind. The don't mind is nice because you don't want to just turn your back on a patient.
Right.
So then they would start entering the notes. They're finished with the notes. Patients still having their blood pressure taken because it takes about 3 minutes for the meter to read. I told them, okay, now's when you take your shade. Okay, you take your shade. As soon as you take your shade, the moment you take that shade guide out of the mouth, you place your topical because the topical takes 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes to work. And so all of a sudden, I had cut 15 minutes off of every single appointment time. Now, whenever you're seeing 10 patients a day, 15 minutes per appointment time, that's a couple more patients.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of dentists don't think that way, or they try to do it when they're not ready for that to be the thing that they do. It's not the lever they need to throw at that time. Maybe they're already very clinically efficient. Maybe their team's just great, and doing that is a waste of time. But I think when you first start, and about 3 to 5 years after that, it's a great time to redo that study.
I think something else that you brought up in there about the notes, that's one of my biggest pet peeves, is that how many people are still waiting till the end of the day to do their notes. Worse, the end of the week.
End of the month in some cases I've seen.
Oh, I once worked with a doctor. He was 8 months behind on surgery notes. How do you know what you did?
No, you don't. You just make it up.
Yeah, I mean it's awful, and it was because he couldn't control his time. The management wasn't there, but you know, with what's available inside of, because I love technology too, and technology plays such a part of what we do in dental practices every day. You should be able to set up those notes just like you, to take the time to think what's through each step. Shoot, if you've got an assistant who's been with you, they can probably do those for you as well. You just double check, and it should be click, 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 click. One of the things is, and this was one of my early mentors that taught me this, it's like, just give me the facts.
Yes.
No fluff, give me the facts. That's what your clinical notes need to be. You don't need to write, if you want to put down that the family's going to Disney so you can talk about that, great, put it in the memo or something. But I mean, some of these notes that I'm like, you could cut the fat. That's probably 5 or 10 minutes off of writing those notes in there as well. And it's just that we don't use the tools that are available for us to make our lives easier.
So a few years back, I wrote a book about practice management, and then I chickened out and didn't publish it. One of the chapters was entitled, "Don't tell me about your efforts, show me your results." Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of people, particularly when they failed at something, they want to tell you all the things that were involved and how they failed and why it's not really their fault. But as a CEO, I don't care whose fault it is. I just want to know, did what we tried to do work? And if it didn't, let's find a solution together that will work. And so I actually, I lost an employee over that. I guess they were not used to that type of a situation. They felt like I wasn't seeing them. And so I had to moderate the way that I said it. But I think it's very important for dentists to know that it's not about the efforts that go into solving the problem. It's the results that matter. So don't waste time rehashing failures. Just say, yeah, we tried this and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. I need your help to find a solution, or I have a solution. Better, I have a solution.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one thing that's missing, because as a society, we're extremely defensive. We always feel that we have to defend everything that we do. And so I would prep my teams. This is when I was managing or when I'm working with a practice. And it's like, don't bring me a problem if you haven't thought of a solution that can fix it. Otherwise, you're just complaining. and that isn't helping us do anything at all.
So our system of communication within the office, everyone had a post office box. And all office memos went into post office boxes, and you were required to check them every single day. If your box wasn't empty, at the end of the day, you got written up. So we also had an accordion file, which we called the tickler. In other words, what you would do is you would put the days of the month, and we had it up to 31 because some months have 31. Mm-hmm. And the memo would go out, and it would say, by this date, this is due. It would be put in their box. They would put it in their personal tickler file, and they would put it 1 to 2 days in advance, or 4 days or 5 days, however long they thought it was going to take them to get that done. And then they would put it on their to-do list. Mm-hmm. And every day they would go through their tickler file. And then, oh no, I haven't gotten this done. I need to get this done because I've got 5 days until the deadline. But when a problem arose in the practice and someone wanted to talk about that practice, we did the same thing with memos. But they had to write a memo addressing the entire staff. And the reason for that is that cuts out on the cattiness and on the finger pointing.
Yes.
Because everyone's going to know who said what. And then they have to supply a proposed solution. Because if you don't have a solution to something, you have no business griping about it.
Yep. I love it.
I was extreme ownership before extreme ownership was a book.
Well, I've always taken that when somebody comes to me and they're like, I've got a problem with so-and-so. And it's like, have you gone to that person directly? No, then you need to go there first. Don't bring it to me until you get there. And then when it did come to me, I would say, okay, I'm going to go get that person. We're going to bring it together. Are you okay with that? No. Okay, then this isn't a problem anymore, right? If you can't be an adult in today's world and say, everything isn't a fight. Right. It isn't an attack on anyone's character. All it is here's a problem that I see. How can we change it? But unfortunately, we're not grown up enough in a lot of dental practices to handle things that way. And it's a huge problem.
I agree. The way that we would do that, we call it personal counseling. Someone has a problem in the office. They have a problem with a person or with something a person did. We would bring myself and my office manager, who was a real office manager, into the same room. And what would happen is I would say person A, person B. Okay, so person A, you have a problem that you'd like to bring up. Person B, do me a favor. I need you just to sit there and listen. I don't want you to think of a response. Just sit and listen. Mm-hmm. Okay, person A's finished. Okay, person A, you are finished talking. Person B, how did that make you feel? Okay. Person B, tell us the situation through your eyes. Mm-hmm. Person A, how did that make you feel? Okay, excellent. Now, everyone knows how everyone feels. And feelings are important, but they don't solve the problem.
Nope.
So I'm going to ask you, person A, do you have a solution for this problem? Okay. Person B, what do you think about that solution? Do you have any issues with it? Do you think we can make the solution better? Do you have a solution to the problem? No? Okay, person A, we're going to use your solution. We're going to see how that works. I need a memo on my desk Monday morning after it's been implemented. I want you to both tell me what your observations were. Fantastic. Do we have any other issues we need to raise today? No. Great. You guys go ahead and get back to work. Thank you so much for being such amazing team players.
Yeah.
Boom. It's done.
Mm-hmm. And it's not difficult.
It's not, but it requires what I like to call confront.
Yeah.
The ability to face problems not anonymously and to take ownership of the fact that you do have a problem, either yourself or with something someone else did or with a process, and not just to throw it out into the universe and hope someone fixes it.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
So this is going to be a really boring podcast if we keep agreeing on everything. Are you
do what you like?
Are you familiar with the concept of VFP, or valuable final product?
No.
Okay. So you remember I told you that there was the one ring. And what's the one ring?
The one ring is, I don't remember.
Net production.
Net production.
Okay. So your net profit is the one ring. So VFP, valuable final product, is that thing which contributes to net productivity and our net profit that you create by your efforts within your job. And so the hardest position to do that with, unless you are fully utilizing your auxiliaries, is assistants.
Mm-hmm.
Assistants don't create money.
No.
But they do.
They do.
But most dentists don't understand that what they are is force multipliers. And so what you have to look at is, if I am fully assisted in doing a crown, how long does it take me of my time to do? And again, block scheduling comes into play and marking correct times for who's there. And so what we would do is we would say, okay, look, this assistant is a force multiplier of this much. This assistant is a force multiplier of this much. And guess what? We had a pay grade system based upon who could get raises,
Nice.
based upon what your multiple was, because that was your valuable final product.
Mm-hmm.
Front desk, a fully booked appointment book, 2 productivity goals. And you know the nice thing about that? All of these can be converted into statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, we were booked to 5,000. We need to be booked to 6,000. All right. What's 6,000 divided into 5,000? Oh, that's the percentage utilization. Looks like you're falling short. We wanted to run at 110%. And a lot of people will pick up on that and go, well, that's impossible to continue increasing at 110%. That's a goal.
Yeah.
Not a dream, a goal. Because each month you have a management meeting where you bring the employees in and they speak as owners of this business, as people who are part of what you're doing, and not just as people who are being spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
And you lay it out on the table and you say, okay, look, our goal for this month is this. How do we meet that? What problems are we going to encounter in getting there? There was no we can't or we won't. I fired those people.
Yeah.
We can't, because can'ts and won'ts will never.
Yep.
So it's an old saying I love. Hard work beats talent when talent don't work hard.
Very true.
All right, give us some pearls. I think this is what this is going to degenerate into, is just us going back and forth with pearls.
Oh, Lord. My pearls. Well, one, I try to look at things from the team's perspective. When I go in and I work with a team, it's more, how do I help the team? So the first thing I do is I don't try to change doctors. I don't try to change the way that they work. I teach the team to work with them, which changes the ball game a lot of the times, because they want to morph them into something that they're not, and when you've got 2 doctors working in a practice, they don't have to practice the same. We want things to be simple and consistent, and that causes a lot of issues in practices, especially you're a doctor, you've been practicing, you bring in an associate, especially one right out of school. Well, they're not going to be as fast as you are. They aren't going to have the knowledge that you have. They've just got out of school and could spend 4 hours prepping a crown, So we have to be realistic in what our expectations are when we grow practices. And I think the worst thing that can ever happen is when you bring in an associate and we put them in a hygiene chair and have them do hygiene because we didn't plan for them to join the practice. I mean, we physically planned. We went out and found the associate we wanted, and we got a start date, and they're coming into the practice. But how did we plan for them in that schedule? What did you do for them? So I will have my teams put a schedule together so they walk in and they're producing day one, because they shouldn't be a financial drain to bring an associate in. If your plan is, I know I'm going to take a hit for a little bit, you haven't planned for that associate to walk in the door.
Right.
And how do you do that? That's one of the topics that I speak on, is how to bring in an associate and make them profitable from day one, and giving them a schedule where they actually do work. My other thing is, I was involved in this situation. This was in my second dental practice I ever worked in. And we had 3 doctors in the practice. We had a senior doctor, dad used to own the practice. We had daughter, current practice owner, and we had an associate inside of the practice. And they worked different schedules and such. Well, the owner doctor she just decided that the associate couldn't do anything but fillings because that was taking away from her production. Yet the associate's diagnosing this because the associate was there full time. The owner doctor wasn't there full time. And I actually left that position over that because she flat out told me that, patients are requesting the associate. She was more personable and things as well. And it wasn't about what that patient wanted. It was all about the owner doctor's ego when at the end of the day, this was early. This is before I even knew how to evaluate practices at this point in time. But I knew it was the wrong decision because she's just killing all the profitability for everybody in the practice by doing it that way. So, planning when you want to bring in an associate or you think it's time to bring in an associate, planning. Another thing is I don't shoot in the dark when it's like, do we need another hygienist? Well, I sit down and I look at how much hygiene time do we have available? How many patients do we have? How many new patients are we going to have? And how are we growing on a 6-month cycle? To look and see, because sometimes you have people that are, got to fill a schedule, but you look at the numbers and it's like, you're never going to fill the schedule. All you're doing is moving people around, creating a bunch of busy work because you have too much hygiene time for your patient base that you have. So, I like facts. Numbers are facts. Is it the only fact? No, there's always a why that goes to those things as well. You have to make sure the why isn't just a woe is me story that's an excuse.
There's so much goes into that though. If you're not correctly scheduling,
yep,
then so many of the rules of thumb don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my rules of thumb was, are you booked out 2 months in advance? Is your schedule full or you just have patients 2 months out?
Right.
If your schedule is full and you're booked out 2 months in advance, are you profitable in that hygiene share? And the rule of thumb I use is 3x minimum.
Mm-hmm.
If you are 3x profitability, your ROI on having that hygienist, and a little on ROI, currently it costs $30 to $35 to flip a room. That needs to be accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have assisted hygiene, the time for the assistant to flip the room needs to be accounted for in your hourly cost of doing business, what I call COGS, cost of goods sold. So if you're making 3 times that amount, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
If you're booked out 2 months in advance and your schedule is solid and you're making that amount, it's time to bring on another hygienist.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something I wanted to interrupt so bad because you're preaching to the choir to me. Read the book Leaders Eat Last.
Yep.
Because if you are bringing on an associate, your duty as a CEO is to make sure that they can perform and that they are set up to succeed. And the only way you do that is taking off your plate. And, if you're doing it right, mm-hmm. and you're running your practice well and you're correctly scheduled to production numbers, it's going to be fine. They're going to actually be, the hole in the dam that allows more people to flow through. But if not, all you're doing is you're switching out the hole you're flowing through for another hole, and it's a smaller pipe.
Well, and then if you don't have a good associate contract, don't use your roommate from college who's a lawyer that doesn't know anything about dental. It's like I've seen a lot of those situations as well, that you need to make sure you have a very solid contract that protects both of you in that, so that associate is protected. Because most people, if you're going to bring on an associate, it's because one day you want them to buy in or buy you out of the practice. You may have how you sold your practice, go in but still there's some dynamic, because most associates want to be business owners. Now, I've seen a lot of women dentists come out that they want the flexibility to be a mom and to be a dentist, and they have no desire to ever be a business owner, and people don't have those conversations either. Or look for somebody who has the same ideologies as you do in dentistry. It does no good to be a very conservative dentist in how you diagnose, and you bring in a young gun who is like going to do all these different things that you've never done. And, so there really is an art to who you bring into your practice and how, but making sure that you protect them too, because by bringing them in, you really are taking them under your wing and teaching them. And unfortunately, there's a lot of dentists out there that have no clue what they're doing, and they're teaching dentists to have no clue what they're doing.
Totally agree. On contracts, one of my titles, you're going to love it. A contract isn't about the first kiss, it's about the divorce.
Yep.
So there is a difference, and I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. There's a difference between being conservative and undertreating.
Yes.
And I see more of the latter than of the former. And it's rooted in cowardice. Dentists we all want to be good people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're too afraid to have conversations with patients that we need to have to discuss treatment that they need, if we're letting small cavities build up until they're a root canal and a crown because it's easier to sell to someone who's in pain, you're doing a disservice to your patients.
Yeah.
And frankly, you disgust me. Grow a backbone, have good conversations that are productive with your patients, find what they need, then tell them find what they want, then tell them what they need. But you can only fix a problem that a patient owns, because there is no solution to a problem that doesn't exist. So unless you can have your patients own their problems through having good discussions with them, you can't fix problems, and so those problems don't exist.
Yep. Well, the other thing is, most dentists, they have an intraoral camera. Why? Because, the sales reps, they'll tell you need an intraoral camera. But how many of you use them? You're one of the few. I see so many. And pediatric dentists, you should be using cameras all the time in your practices, because those tiny little mouths are very, very difficult to see inside of. And show the parents what's going on inside of those mouths. Show your patients. My dad's a pretty simple guy. He hangs out in his garage and he restores cars. He's painted vans. That was a business that my mom and dad had when I was a kid. And, so pretty simple. And
did they paint the vans for the little white vans that looked like ice cream vans for all the pedophiles, or no?
No, not those vans. These conversion vans, when those came out, in the 80s.
Those are pretty cool.
And I remember my parents swearing that they would never have a van. And my mom, we had a van, and it had a TV in it, which was like the coolest thing ever.
Did you guys have the plush captain's chairs?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Did you have a removable snack table?
I don't think we had that in our van. These were early. I can remember, because this is today, oh my God, we would be in so much trouble. But when my mom and my grandma would go pick up the vans for my dad and his team to paint, the only chair that was in it was the driver's seat, so my sister and I are sitting in the back of these vans. There isn't a seat belt. There isn't even a seat back there, and you're just like, whatever. But my dad's a real simple guy, right? So he's at this dentist. This dentist happened to be in the same building that my pediatric office started in, and he was on my parents' list, and I'm on my insurance soapbox, but I knew he was a good dentist. And so my dad goes there for the first time. Had come from an office, a lot of neglect, like what you're talking about. You can say that, you're a dentist, I'm not, so I use different terms. But and he had a big crack in an old filling, and so they had an intraoral camera picture, and they showed him, and my dad flat out said, "I would tell you that you're full of crap, but I just saw it." My dad's scheduled to have that crown done. Mm-hmm. And he slowly started having all these old fillings. the conversations that I was taught from very early that you have, the, amalgams, composites, like the roads that we drive on and how but when you show somebody, so it's like the technology is sitting in your office to support so many things, yet we don't use it. Why? Because we don't have time. No, you have time. You're not using your time effectively. And I love it because it goes back to the way that you did the time study to see how do you work those things in there and you educate your patients. Now, unfortunately, they're just starting to figure out that the mouth is part of the body. And one day, maybe...
Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Wait, the mouth is part of the body?
I know. Isn't that crazy?
It's almost like we're a meat tube with two holes on either end.
I mean, one day they're going to figure out eyes are too.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's weird. But it's like now we're starting to see all this oral systemic stuff and all the other different things that come out. I could do no justice to all the different studies that I've seen, that I've read and things. But yet we read that stuff, we hear about it, we learn about it. How are you educating your patients?
How many patients are actually getting probed at least once a year? How many patients are actually getting probed correctly? Where they actually look at the CEGA and they look at the mucogingival junction and they correctly identify pocketing instead of just poking them with a probe and taking a measurement.
Yeah. Because there's nobody there to support your hygienist to make sure that they have help.
And a lot of hygienists are too lazy.
Yeah.
Just point blank too lazy.
Well, it's like when you walk in, the age-old thing, you walk into a practice, they've got 3% perio, and it's because they don't have perio. It's like, what's in your water, Right. So, yeah, it just goes back to all the things that we can look at every statistic under the sun. We can read out of journals. We can read all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're not doing it in your practice and you're educating your patients, well, one, somebody else will. That's where you're going to lose patients and why they're going other places, or when people say this. The other thing, I'm going to go down a huge rabbit hole in here in just a second, but there's somebody that I have found that I admire because of all the medical billing, but it's like, there is such an opportunity for you to make money by billing medical, because when people have systemic diseases that they did find out that the mouth is part of the body, and medical is paying for some of that stuff for these patients, which leaves you money to do the restorative on them, making your lives even easier when it comes down to that money conversation that everybody's afraid to have in your practice. I always say the hardest thing to do in your practice should be to schedule. I mean, people should pay with a smile. They should understand up front, and it's because of the care that you're delivering to them confidently. And if you don't believe in your dentist, I know this is mostly dentists, but dentists, if you've got team members who don't believe in what you're doing, get rid of them, because they will talk your patients right out of doing that treatment.
100%. One of the easiest things I ever learned whenever it came to case acceptance is I bought a $5 bore light. Now, I know you from a hunting place because you're from country girl.
I am.
So you know what a bore light is. They're $5 on Amazon. And so what I would do is I would tell the patient, have you ever been out in bright sunlight? And when I talk to patients, I always use a little bit of a drawl. I slow things down.
Bring out that Texan.
Absolutely. So you ever been out in bright sunlight and you see the sun shine on the window, it blinds you, it bounces off? Well, your teeth are kind of like that. If there's a crack in it that is all the way through, whenever a light shines on it, it bounces off. Let me show you something neat about this tooth right here. And I take the bore light with a little plastic cover on it because it's an indirect instrument, which means it doesn't have to be sterilized.
Yep.
Just has to be clean. You put the bore light there, you take your intraoral camera, put your intraoral camera there, click, and all of a sudden, half of their teeth's lit up. And
really?
Yep. And you say, well, what do you think about what you just saw? And then you shut up. Because one of the most difficult problems that dentists have whenever it comes to treatment planning is not shutting up. When you present a problem to a patient, you leave it hanging and you create a feeling of anxiety, of not I'm afraid, but what comes next. And you don't give them that information. then what they always do is they tell you their intention and they ask you to fix it. And whenever someone asks you to fix it, they can't disagree with fixing it.
Right.
And so that's one of the hurdles in case acceptance that you never have to overcome. You know, if you show them that crack and you say, what are your thoughts on this? Well, I don't know. You're the dentist. Don't answer. They didn't ask you. They just said, you're the dentist.
Yeah.
And if you're quiet, if you've ever been talking to somebody and all of a sudden they just shut their mouth, you feel this tension in the room. And as human beings, we want to feel that. We want to fill that silence. We want a relief from the tension. Someone's got to talk. And if it's not the dentist, the patient's going to talk. So they either say, I'm not really concerned about that. Then your proper response is, well, I am, but it's your mouth. And I believe in allowing people to make their own decisions.
Yep.
So let's move on to the next thing. Or, and say, I am going to remind you about it. Or the patient says, well, how do we fix it? I'm glad you asked. There's a couple of different ways we can fix it. In this instance, because of how far down that light is traveling, this crack's big. We're going to need to crown this tooth. I know it's probably not what you want to hear, but I bet you want to hear a lot less that I'm not at work on a Saturday when it breaks. Easy peasy. Keep it simple. Leave room for them to fill the silence.
I love that. I teach the same thing when I'm teaching people how to collect money and present treatment plans.
Surprised.
I'm sure you are. I talk to a lot of offices, and I'm like, how do you make treatment affordable? And they just kind of look at me like, what do you mean?
Baby, monthly payments. That's how people think.
Yeah. Well, we use Care Credit. Okay.
Do you pre-finance it and present it as Care Credit monthly payments, or do you present it as one lump sum?
Are you asking me or them?
I'm asking them because I know the answer.
But here's the piece of it is I love it when people tell me, oh, no. Everybody pays in full at time of service. And I say,
no, they pay in full to schedule.
Oh, do you send statements? And they go, oh yeah, we send a couple hundred of those a month. I'm like, oh, so people have payment arrangements that you have no control over. So, and to your point, it's like, however you set that up, but you can't be afraid to offer people options. I'll let people do things like I split things up in halves or thirds. And somebody's like, well, can I do fourths? Yeah, you're going to pay a quarter of it then to schedule it, then a quarter of it. You can make anything affordable. And that's what people are looking. I use words like budgets. You know, which one of these are going to fit your budget, or what does fit your budget? So I know. Does that mean that when somebody tells me I can pay $10 a month, I'm going to do the treatment and let them pay $10 a month for the rest of their life? No, I'm not the bank. My boss isn't the bank, right? I'm going to see if I can figure out how to make this affordable, but yet we don't even have that conversation.
Well, I'm going to make one point there. If they already are not good at financial management, they should never be the person financing the patient. But if they do have great systems in place and good follow through in their team, absolutely. I even would do payment plans where I'd say, okay, look, we can either go with this company over here and they charge me 10% for that treatment. And I'm willing to pay that. That was my third option always. After we reminded them 3 times.
Not what Care Credit says. They want to be first. No,
exactly.
No.
So 3 times we would remind them. And on the third call, my team would say, look, Dr. Huffpower has given me authorization to allow you to do third-party financing. Let me tell you what that means. He's going to pay for them to finance you. He's going to pay 10% of the cost of this treatment. That is how strongly he feels about you getting this treatment done. He's worried about you. There is nothing wrong with good works publicized. But we as dentists are cowards. We don't put out there what it is that we're doing for the patients really. Or maybe we just don't conceive of it and think of it in that way. But that's really what you're doing.
Or you don't even know the cost of doing business with those companies.
I think that's a lot of them.
Well, or the dentist knows the cost, but the team doesn't know the cost. Like I'll encounter teams, heavy PPO practices, and they're offering 18 to 24 months deferred financing. It's like, well, okay, let's say you're writing off 25%. I'm being generous there, you know, and then you're paying another 18 to 20% to finance them. Well, if I'm running at a 60% overhead, it costs me more money to see them.
If you're running at a 60% overhead, you don't have these problems because you're already a good business manager. Most dentists are running between a 75 and an 80% overhead.
Oh yeah,
which
absolutely.
is insane.
It's so insane. But they don't even look at it in terms of, even if you're doing well in what that is, and still what am I giving away in that? You know, I've encountered, I evaluated a practice and looked at what they were doing because of what they were producing. And they were paying, that dentist was paying $100 a day to have their patients in hygiene because it was losing money. But they don't understand how to evaluate to that perspective, and a lot of times it's because they can't say no. They want to be nice. You know, well, if I don't say yes, they're going to go someplace else. People respect honesty and building. Again, it's relationship building.
So in my practice, everyone knew all the numbers. They knew what I took home. They knew what our overhead was. They knew specifically this is how much we're spending on supplies, this is how much we're spending on labs, here's why. And they knew their part in it. Like I said, their VFP. They knew what their valuable final product was. And so those were easy conversations to have. My team would be the ones who'd say, Doc, we can't do that. Have you looked at the overhead on this? Said, I have. Here's why I'm willing to do it. But it would be a discussion, you know. I think this is a huge problem in dentistry, that the teams don't know how the machine works. And you shouldn't be using a machine you don't know how it works.
Yeah. Now I'm going to disagree with you.
Oh, go ahead.
I know. I was just saying that this will make it fun for the podcast, right?
Absolutely.
One thing I'm 100% on board for the team knowing the numbers. I have never been a proponent of sharing how much the doctor takes home.
There's a difference between doctor's salary and CEO salary.
Well, I understand that. But even at that, because a lot of times, and depending upon where you are and how much your practice produces, you're talking about numbers that some of your team members, they can't even fathom that. They can't fathom $1 million or anything of that. So that's where I keep that overhead game. We can talk about everybody else, or I'll go into, hey, here's where our supplies are and we've got to cut back. And, so I'll tiptoe around it. If they understand, they're going to figure out how much the doctor takes home. Cause it's like, well, if we're collecting $1 million and we're operating at a 60% overhead.
Right.
Okay. So, but it's also making sure that our team has the IQ or the literacy to understand the financials that you're giving them. So in making sure, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think when the team can take ownership of that it's very powerful because they feel that they're part of something, and typically that there's something in it for them. But at the end of the day, I have zero problem reminding team members, we offered you a position and you accepted at this wage. We're living up to our end of the deal. You're not entitled to more.
Nope.
It is what it is.
Let me convince you. So what I did is, before I decided to share everything, first of all, remember that we also have VFP that they know about.
Right.
And that their raises are based on VFP.
True.
Okay. The next part of that is I actually ran a breakpoint analysis showing 10 years without work, then my salary at the time, charted in real time, followed by my loan repayments as a second line to show how much I was actually getting to keep. And then I ran the top 10 professions that are out there with 0 college degree, starting at day 0, earning money, and the top 10 with a 2-year associate degree. And I don't catch up until 30 years down the road. So by doing that, I gave them perspective.
I like that.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I love that. And
And I also drove a 2014 FJ Cruiser, so I wasn't running around a Jag.
right. Well, and that's the thing. So my husband makes dentures. We are a full-on dental family at my house. And so he had a boss. This was years ago before he started his own lab. He had a boss he owned 2 locations at the time, brings everyone in for a team meeting and tells them that the business cannot sustain paying for them to have medical anymore. They were losing their medical insurance at the end of the year. This is like December. They were losing it December 31st. And so he has this. The very next day, he had a Christmas party at his home. His home with an indoor pool and an elevator in it. Okay, so
Not a good look.
not a good look at all. Now, and my husband, he was just like, can you believe this? And I'm like, well, let's see. Do I want to be the team member or do I want to be the consultant in this position? My husband and I have conversations like this all the time. And I said, well, I'm going to put my consultant hat on for a minute. And I'm going to say, you know what? He went to school for 8 years. He has built these practices. He deserves what he has. His biggest mistake is he took his team there. So dentist, everything that Doc is saying and how you're building and what you're doing. And yeah, sometimes you have to make financial decisions because when you've got 50 people working for you, the insurance and things, but don't turn around and take them to your home or boast about. You can't drive to work in your Jag, in your, $150,000 Audi or whatever, and then tell them that you can't afford something because all they see is the material things. And it's like, okay, so you just took that away. And so that's one thing that I think goes along with, as you're making business decisions too, make sure that you aren't boasting. This man is a very boastful man. No concept of that at all in his world. But, it's like, and then you wonder why your team members don't stay. So I like to throw that little bit of perspective in. I'm fortunately never worked for any dentist like that.
No. I totally get that. You saw what the original house looked like here. So we lived in that part and it was nice, but it wasn't what we have now.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I didn't build this until well after I'd retired. And I built it with the profits from my other endeavors. I had a couple of companies that I exited for good returns. And I was already at my number, which every dentist out there should know what that means. And if you don't, it means how much money do you have to have invested to give you a residual income that exceeds your living expenses. And so there was a good reason I tell my team members about what I made.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because I would bring them to all of my financial classes.
Nice.
Because I wanted them to be successful as well. And so we would learn together about how to invest, how to make trusts, how to utilize tax law to keep as much money as possible. And, some of them took me up on it. Some of them didn't.
Yeah.
But I am the dentist who brought his team to every single CE because the Wednesday morning phenomenon is true. Dentist gets back from a weekend CE. Monday morning, they're on fire. By Wednesday, the team has convinced them they're not doing it, or they've just kind of, calmly ignored him until he loses his fire.
Yep.
So when you do things like that, I think that as a team, I hope that as a team, because I don't have that perspective, that it gives you a different viewpoint of that dentist compared to a dentist who doesn't do those things.
I love that. And I met another dentist. He had a consulting company, and I was going to go to work for them. They decided not to move forward with me. Different specialty than what I was in anyway. So it was like a means to an end. It wasn't really the passion there. But one of the things that he did in his bonus systems, very similar to like what you've done, is he worked to help make his team financially free and retire them early.
It's the biggest gift you can give them.
The biggest. I mean, so he's retiring people in their 40s, ladies, if you see this, and gentlemen, sorry, and celebrating when he lost a great team member because he taught them to live financially free, to invest for their future, and they had enough money to do that at an early age. And I love that. I think that there is such an opportunity in dentistry to do different things than what we've just been programmed to do, and to really set up people who, again, IQ level, education level, you know, I didn't graduate from college. I went for 4 years. You know, I didn't graduate because I ended up going into dental assisting, but I had a thirst for knowledge. I am a year and a half away from finishing my bachelor's degree in business administration and startup business because I felt like I needed letters behind my name. It's stuff I do every day. It's so funny. I'll be in a class and it's like, oh, I know how to do. Oh, and it's nice to know I've learned the right things to do, but I've done it backwards. And, you know, but not every employee has that drive. Not every dentist has that drive, but to be able to give those gifts in a different way. When you're 20, you know, you're not thinking about retiring. I mean, it's like we are old people. And
but it's when you should start.
It's when you should start, because that multiplication and teaching them that. I have this saying that I always say, I can't believe I just thought about this right now, but I always say telling isn't teaching. You can tell somebody to do something over and over again, and they're not going to learn to do it because you're not teaching them. Same thing in terms of how to prepare for their future. You want to have a team that isn't asking you for an early paycheck or something else that they need help from, you know, and teaching them financial literacy and how to live financially free, and making, when the business is doing well, making that part of it for them, you know? So I think that's amazing what you've done for your team, and more people should take cues like that.
Well, I wish that all of them took me up on it.
Yeah.
But, you know, some people didn't see the benefit of leaving their families for a weekend or what have you. And I'll be honest, it's expensive. But I remember one time, this was before the dome was there, and I definitely would have brought them to that. I wanted my team to have experiences because I wanted them to look forward to it. And whenever they looked back on my practice, I didn't want them to remember the time I had to chew their ass. I wanted them to remember things like the time that I took them to Vegas for an implant CE, and I asked the instructors to let them drill too, so that they could experience what I experienced, because I thought that would be better training than just sitting there. Or whenever that same trip was in Vegas, so I hired a limo to take us out that night. And so we went out and we hit a casino, and I gave them each $500. And I said, this is for you to blow or stick in your pocket. But either way, I want you to have a fantastic night tonight. So you guys go and do it. I said, look, here's my gambling rule. You know, Doc's all about rules. And they all kind of rolled their eyes. And I said, so you put your money that you bring in your right pocket, and you put your winnings in your left pocket. When your right pocket's empty, you're done. You drink all night for free, however much you want, that's fine. But you always remember, you never dig into your left pocket. And so most of them left with a lot more money than I gave them, you know. But they all remembered that, and they brought it up a lot. You know, those are great memories, and those are the kind of memories you should have about practice when you retire. It shouldn't be all about the drudgery.
Yeah.
Because that's where burnout comes from.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you invested in your team for CE. Let's go back to that CEREC I talked about earlier, the E4D or whatever and stuff. How many dentists bought those? They went to CE, but didn't take their team with them, or didn't invest in having their team trained. And like you said, they have no clue how to help them And so now it just became a really big expense because it takes too much time for the dentist to do. And it's like, you can't look at those things as, gosh, I've already paid this much. Do you know how much more it's going to cost me to take them? No, it's the investment, because how much more VFP can they bring to the table for you?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny you bring this up. E4D was my biggest failure as a business leader.
Really? I think it's a lot of dentists.
It was, so I graduated in 2012. And the first investment I made was a 3M TrueDef scanner, if you remember those. You had to spray powder on the teeth.
Oh, yes.
And so that got old real quick. I was getting great results with it, better than impressions, but I realized its weaknesses. So whenever the E4D came out, I jumped on it pretty quick, got the mill and the ovens and all that kind of stuff. But I was a young dentist at the time. I didn't have a whole lot of money, so I didn't bring my team with me. And the way that I set things up is sometimes I would send my team to education without me whenever other parts of the team had already done the education, if that makes sense. Because, you know, you do have to realize every time you take off for CE, you are losing profits.
Yeah.
And so I could never get anyone who would agree to go to Dallas to learn to do this, because I think it was too far out of their comfort zone. I'm convinced that if I had at that time said, well, screw it, we're taking the week off, you're either going to lose money because I'm taking the week off, or you're going to make money by going to training with me, because I was not above pulling that kind of shit on them.
Sure.
I think I would have gotten a lot better buy-in from the team, but I screwed the pooch on that one hard, because I went myself, and then I never could get anyone to go out. I brought people in to train, particularly when we did the plan scan. Whenever we picked up the what do they call that one?
The Trios?
Trios, yeah, the Trios 3. When we picked up the Trios 3, I brought the trainers into the office because I had learned from my mistake. But I never did get them to learn vector graphics and how to design crowns, because I wasn't going, you know?
And you know, I think at that time when that technology came out in dentistry, we weren't forced to utilize computers that way. I mean, it's like, I can remember my first dental office, we had a DOS-based system that all it did was the financial. She had everything else was down. We used paper systems and stuff. And then we got Dentrix in our office, and it was like, holy moly. You know, I was in a practice, gosh, not even 10 years ago, and they were on ledger cards. They hand wrote insurance claims. I mean, so I'm not shocked to this day to the stuff that I see, but you know, dentistry is one of those things, and some of us OGs have been in it for a while. We're not technologically savvy. We're not great with computers or things of that nature. So then you bring in a piece of equipment like that, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, you know? And here's where I'm only a dental assistant. I
called mine dental ninjas. I had nicknames for each and every single position on my team. We had financial wizards.
Ooh.
We had patient advocates. We had dental ninjas, and I'm just the doctor.
You know what? I love it. The empowerment there, because, you know, you're just a dental assistant. Guess what? Doctor can't do what he does without you. You know, I'm just the front desk. No. You are the first and the last line that those patients hear and see in those visits. Nobody's just And when you can empower your team to make them feel more valuable, I love those other terminologies to use and things of that nature. It, you know, just because it helps them. This microphone just really wants to be vibrating.
It does. Hold on one sec. Let me fix that for you.
But it really brings that value to them, number one. But number two, it's giving them such a boost. Do you know, when I walked into dental assisting school, okay, so Columbine happened, knew I didn't want to be a hygienist. And I was living in Mount Pleasant. I went to Central Michigan, and I was driving an hour to Bay City to go to Delta College for dental assisting. And on day one, because I just was going to dental assisting school, so it fed my year to wait to get into hygiene school. In day one, my professor said, "Welcome to the single mothers program." I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't have any kids. Like, what? What are you talking about? Like, this is how a professor greeted us. I mean, talk about taking away who you are as an individual. And now we wonder, you know, I'm going to go a little bit political here. I won't go deep, I promise. But the hygienists are in uproar because of what we're allowing assistants to do, assistants that may or may not have been formally trained in anything. Not that assistants
whenever you're demanding $65 to $85 an hour and your boss is paying 1.45 times that hourly rate, whenever you start looking at all of your taxes and all of Medicaid, unemployment insurance, and everything else, they can't make a profit because your valuable final product isn't that valuable.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that I see both sides of the coins. You know, I always try to put my feet in both sides, but it's to some capacity, it's like, I mean, I get where the hygienists are coming from and the doctor, but on the other side, it's like, what do you expect to do? Are we not gonna perform hygiene for these patients? You know, so again, here's what's problem. The entire system is broken in that regard for those things, but it is a numbers game at the end of the day. And I've always been like, if even in most of my pedo hygienists, and I have a lot of coronal polishers, the Midwest tends to use hygienists. Out in the West, in the South, they don't. It's all coronal polishers. Interesting. But most of my pedo hygienists will outproduce my general, who should be periodontal therapist, by a mile. And it's because of what they do. Now, we're not doing perio most of the time, but it's still the volume of kids that we see and what can be accomplished. So I think too that hygienists have got to start looking at how can they come in. They're educated. How can they help that dentist succeed?
And if they want to be viewed as providers and they want to be viewed as clinicians and experts, then they need to not be so damn lazy, just point blank. You know, my hygienist produced between $2,500 and $2,700 a day, which is what she should have been producing.
Yeah.
It was actually at a 5X multiple. Better than that 3X I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. But here's what she was doing. She had an hour and a half for every new patient visit. Mm-hmm. She was taking complete intraoral and extraoral photos. She was doing a complete and correct perio exam. She was doing a cancer screening for any suspicious lesions and taking pictures of anything that she found. She was charting every single deficiency that she saw in the mouth for me to look at. She was pre-framing patients about treatment that they needed done. She was scanning them with my Trios 3 to look at their teeth on a screen. Then she would take all of these pictures and she would put them up on my 75-inch television that sat in front of, not on top of the patient, because watching something on top of you is just weird.
Unless you're a kid.
So, and she would ask them, "What do you think about your smile? Do you see anything that you'd like to fix?" And I had trained her. Whenever a patient would say, "No, I don't see anything," she would say something to the fact, if there was an issue that existed. "Okay, I saw this space right here and I thought it might bother you, but I'm glad it doesn't." She just planted a seed.
Oh, yeah.
And by the time I got in, that patient wanted ortho because they would say, "Well, you know, what about that space?" "Oh, it's you like your smile. It is fantastic. It's a beautiful smile." They said, "Well, do you think other people see that?" "Well, smile for me." And she'd give them a mirror because I always had a big magnifying mirror in the op. Mm-hmm. They'd smile and they're turning the mirror. "Oh, I see that." She had the highest close rate of orthodontics for any person there because she knew she had the time.
Yep.
And she rebelled against all this as we were implementing it. But there are three types of personalities in dentistry. There are solids, there are gases, and there are liquids. Solids will never change. They make a great foundation, but if you put pressure on them, they shatter.
Mm-hmm.
Liquids will flow into any vessel that you put them in, and they will take the shape of that vessel. So whatever your expectations are, a liquid will try its best within its capacity to do that thing. Gases will fill any vessel that you put them in and take up its entire space.
Yep.
Now, Anna was a gas. Gases are good and bad because gases can be compressed into any space that you want. But when you compress a gas, it gets hot. So you have to apply pressure slowly until the gas cools off and realizes, okay, this is the new space I'm in. If you try to push too fast, it's going to explode.
It's a really good point. And you knew your team. You knew how to motivate and train them and how hard to push them.
Psychology is 75% of dentistry.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I tell people like about the front desk is like, you know, I know how hard I can push people because I've sat in those seats and I've done each one of those jobs. I know what it's like to do that. And I tell them, you know, there's days you're going to be mad at me. It's okay. I got thick skin. There's days that you're not going to like me because change is hard. But at the end, you're going to love me because I'm going to make your job easier for you. And I'm going to let all of this technology do the work for us in that. I have a story, total switch back to the hygiene thing.
That's okay.
I was in a practice one time and this hygienist looking at the depths and stuff. I'm not a hygienist, but been in this for a while. And I saw that like at minimum, this patient should have been 1 to 3 teeth per quad scaling. And she didn't diagnose it. She scheduled them back, you know, or co-diagnose it. She scheduled them back for a cleaning. And I said, Joanna, I said, why didn't you present perio? Because based on what I'm seeing, the bleeding, everything else, there's 5s, there's 6s. She was like, well, she's like, I know their family, they're farmers. And, you know, so.
Do farmers not deserve good care?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I said to her, I go, here's what I know, Joanna. I said, because I've watched them work. I said, when they come back in, you're going to do that scaling as deep as you can without anesthetic because you're not going to let that stuff just sit there. And I said, so every day we're doing periodontal therapy in this office and we're charging out a pro fee for it. I said, and that's a disservice. I said, how much did you pay to go to hygiene school? And she looked at me and she goes, well, I went to a private school. And I said, oh, so it costs more than those who are going to the state schools. And she's like, yeah. I said, are you worth an $80 pro fee or are you worth $125 per quad? She stood up. She's like, well, I have a great education. I'm worth $125 per quad. I said, then start getting paid for what you're doing, you know? And I walk a fine line because I'm not a hygienist and I'm not a doctor, but I can see things like that it's like, come on, stop these small community dental offices, stop looking in your patients' pockets. You have no idea what they have or what they're going to invest into, you know? So you're laughing. So you have the same.
You're going to love this story. So we have a guy who comes in and he's wearing overalls and he's a chicken farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you know, I've been thinking for a while, real slow, about doing something about my smile. I just wanted to see what your opinion was about what we could do. And so I said, well, I don't mind taking a look, you know. We'll get you in. We'll do a complete exam because I'm going to want to know if your gums and stuff are healthy enough for us to do anything responsibly. Mm-hmm. And if they're not, I'm going to tell you, we're going to take care of that first because that's the rock I'm building my house on. And as you know, you don't build a house on sand. He says, no, I get that. So we bring him in. He's got great perio health. I look at him. I said, well, what you feeling about being in braces at your age? I don't really like that idea. I said, okay, I get that. I was in braces pretty late, and I had wire pop right through my cheek, like through and through. And I think as a kid, I probably would have held I would have done better with that than I did at the time. But I mean, there's another option. We could do veneers, or we could do nothing. I mean, your smile's not bad. Your teeth are pretty darn healthy. I don't see a single cavity in here. And he said, I really want to do something about it. I think it's time. I said, okay. All right. Well, your option's going to be veneers. I'm going to tell you, I'm absolutely not the cheapest in town, but I try to provide the best quality I can. We use very, very expensive labs. And so you're going to, and I would recommend you go to other doctors and get their prices too and find out what fits you. But here's what we're looking at. Smile forming. Okay. Your smile goes all the way back to your molars. So we're talking about a good bit of work here. And it's going to be time consuming. So you'll probably have to take a day off work and come in and just be here the whole day if you want it done quickly. And I'd say that's probably the best way to do it to make sure we get everything matching. Okay, we can do all that. I said, okay, well, let's get you a treatment plan. Well, doc, how much is it going to be? I said, I'm not going to lie to you. The types of crowns I want to put in your mouth, because I do see some wear, it's going to be a difficult case for me. And I'm going to charge for it. It's going to be about $75,000. And he said, okay. And we went up to the front. And my goal, my truth to patients was always, I'm gonna shoot you straight. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna treat your mouth and not your pocketbook. And I'm gonna tell you a price because I know the prices, but my team up front is the final arbiter. And they know things about specials and things that we're running that I don't know, because I actually had empowered them. I gave them these credit cards, and it was just a coupon, but it was X amount off of treatment. And they had a certain number of them they give away each month because I actually accounted for that in my budget, right? And so they were allowed to give 10 to one patient if they wanted. I didn't care because I had already accounted for that loss because it was budgeted. So we knew how much money we were making. And so I let them do that kind of stuff because then they could have the power. And they could tell a patient, yeah, doc's right, but he doesn't know I've got these cards right here, and he told me I can give them to anyone I want, and I want to give them to you. So they get up there. Sure enough, none of them had any cards, and they give him his price, $75,000. And he looks at me and he says, well, you said there might be some deals. I said, the only one I'm authorized to give you, because these girls are the boss, this is the financial wizard right here, and they beat me up whenever people leave if I don't listen to them. So I think, and I looked at my office manager, I think they'll let me give you a 3% cash discount, if you need to go, make financial arrangements home or whatever. Our policy is once you've paid, we schedule. And he said, well, and he reached into the front pocket of his overalls, pulled out a thick envelope, counted out $100,000 in cash. And he says, I think this should just about cover it if you give me that 3% discount. And I looked at my office manager. She said, sold. And I said, all right. She said, I can do it. So we're going to go ahead and we just get you scheduled. The girls will tell you which days they come in because I do not dare to step into their domain. That is all them. So you guys work that out amongst yourselves. And thank you for listening to me and let me take a look.
I love that.
And that's how I produce between $12,500 and $25,000 a day. Just shooting people straight.
Yeah. I love that. I have a very similar story that I use when I start teaching about financials.
Tell us the story.
So
I love these stories.
I was in second grade, and my best friend at the time, her dad was a dairy farmer. They lived on a farm around the corner from us, and her mom was driving. We were in a car accident. Somebody hit us. We were sitting to turn left, and somebody hit us from behind. Totaled the car. We were all okay. Everybody was okay in the accident and stuff. So they needed a new car. So, dairy cows, they've got to be milked. So he did the morning milking, took off, went to buy a car for his wife. And he walked in. So he's in his overalls. He walks in the first dealership, and no one would help him. Wouldn't even come up to him. So he pulls a wad of cash out of his pocket and said, guess I'll go someplace else. Of course, instantly people start coming. I mean, I learned this story in second grade, and I remember it because it just impacted me so much.
Well, this was one of those things we talked about earlier that you could have said it was something early that impacted you.
I didn't think about this story, I guess. All these weird stories I hear. And he went to the next place, and he paid cash for a car, and he got his, so that always goes back to, you just tell people what they need. You're not telling them how they're going to pay for it. That's up for them to decide.
Yep.
You diagnose them. We make it affordable. What that means in your practice is what that means in your practice, because outside financing exists. Now you can get outside financing that will loan to less than stellar credit. I've had doctors go, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to put them in a worse financial position.
It's not your business.
It's not your business. If they want to do that, if this is the means for them to do that, this is what they'll do.
So I mentioned I never did the 0% until the third attempt to schedule them.
Mm-hmm.
What we would do is we would do the one where they pay all the interest for the first 2 visits.
Yeah.
Because that was not my business.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I decided we needed that business enough, I would tell them the story about, I'm going to be paying this interest for you. I think, they can go to a bank and they can get a loan for better terms. And you tell them that. You just have to be financially honest with people when you're doing this stuff, when you're presenting. We would tell them, look, hey, we've got this financing right here. I really don't think it's the best financing you can get, but it's easy, and we can get it done for you today. Or you can go by the bank, or you can talk to your family or friends or whatever. I once had a patient take out a second mortgage on their home to get something done. I never would have done that, but it was important enough to them that that's what it was worth to them. And far be it from me to tell a person what value they should have on them, on themselves, and on their smile and on their health.
Yep.
It's never made much sense to me.
My first dental office I worked in, my boss, he was in theater. So he had friends in theater and things like that. So we had this gentleman that came in, and he came in because his wife would no longer kiss him. And so our hygienist, we saw him first. We did the comp exam. They were always in the dentist schedule back then. That was like a late 90s thing. That's, how a lot of the consultants said to do it.
Some practices still do it, and that's the wrong way to do it.
Oh,
that's okay.
Yeah, it kills your production. But so he comes in, he's a mess. The teeth, they were in terrible, terrible shape. But this man was in theater, so when we gave him the treatment plan, dentures weren't an option because they couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't pop out when he was singing. So, and at that point in time, implants were just becoming a thing. I saw one implant bridge in my time assisting way back then, in the late 90s. So we did veneers and crowns on all of his teeth. He had told our hygienist he couldn't remember the last time he picked up a toothbrush. This man did not brush his teeth. How he was periodontally stable enough, because we were the same way. He had to go through some scaling and root planing, but he didn't have bone loss, and he was able to have these done. And his parents gave him early inheritance. Back then, it was like $25,000 to restore this guy's mouth, and he went back to not brushing his teeth after that.
Yeah.
And, but again, it had nothing to do with us. It was, here's what you need. Here are your options. He figured out he made his choices. We're not responsible for that in our patients. And dentists have to remember, sometimes their hearts are just too far into it. And it's like, nope, you're there to fix a problem.
Right. You're not there to tell someone how they should value themselves.
No.
There's so much of this. I mean, I'm sure we could go on for 10 hours on just stories about things that people have done or stories about patients. The truth is, dentistry can be hard.
Mm-hmm.
And no one wants life to suck.
No.
And sometimes the things that they do to keep their lives from sucking are just the wrong things, because all actions have intended and unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
we need to get better at balancing the unintended ones and seeing them.
Yeah. You know, when I first started, my first 6 months after I came out of dental assisting school, 3 dentists in Lansing, Michigan, surrounding areas, had taken their own lives, all 3 dentists. And it was then that I learned that dentistry was the highest suicide rate at that point in time. And it was like, wow, you know, that hit. And I've met so many amazing dentists on the way that, you know, that they've changed the way that they practice, or they want to help their peers, or they want to find, you know, and sometimes it's like, you think, you know, a lot of it's financial, of course, you know, what finances are, they cause the most divorces, everything else in there, but there's people that can help you. And there's always hope. There's never anything for that. And there's always a way out. Like, again, that pivot, you know, where's the pivot? And I just think there's nothing like dentistry out there at all. It's different every day. The technology, the advancements, what we're doing in dentistry, I don't know of any other industry that changes like ours. And if you just, you know, really find that goal, look at your dreams, turn it into a goal, and where do you want to go? And if you can't guide yourself, get somebody to help guide you on that journey and stuff. You can have an amazing, amazing life. And when, you know, that life is who you are as a outside of dentistry, in your practice, the CEO of your practice, all of those things, it's there. You just have to invest in it. And it's not always money. Sometimes it's time, you know, and take that. I think that, you know, this is one of the most amazing spaces out there.
Yeah, I totally agree. If people take one thing away from this podcast, a goal is just a dream with a deadline and a roadmap.
Mm-hmm. And it's okay if there's detours, right? There's another way there.
One of my favorite stories to tell dentists. So that ideal scene that I have them write, I have them take all 3 pieces of paper, put them in an envelope, tape it to the bottom of a desk, and they make a copy. They keep that copy with them as a daily guide, and the one underneath the desk, it stays there exactly like it was written. And in 1 year, they take it out, and then they do the same thing again. And in 1 year, they do the same thing again until they get to where they want to be. And what I tell them is, you can set out from Florida and you can sail to Italy. You can mark your journey. You can chart it. You can make sure you got all the provisions you want. But if you just set off sailing and you don't correct for winds, you don't correct for tides, you just sail in a straight line per your original plan, you will never reach anywhere near your destination.
Nope.
Because sailing is about making sure that you pivot whenever circumstances change.
Yep.
And business is the same thing.
Yeah. And it's not hard. That's the thing. It's not hard. But again, you have to invest into it. It does become hard.
Because people put it off, and then it builds up.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of like, you know, when I was a kid, I had a hard time cleaning my room.
Yeah.
You know, I'd walk in
with my kids.
and I'd go, I don't know where to start. Until one day I made a decision. I'm going to fix my bed. And then I'm going to take my clothes, because I knew myself. And being intentional is the most important thing, except for being introspective. Because truly be intentional, you must be introspective. You have to examine yourself as an outside stranger and unbiasedly. So I knew myself. I knew if I got that one thing done and I left it at that, I was going to be satisfied I'd gotten a thing done. And so my next step was, now I'm going to pick up all my clothes, dirty and clean, anything that's laying around, and I'm going to put them on the bed, because I can't go to bed tonight with those things sitting there. And if I just throw them on the ground, I'm going to hate myself. So I'm going to have to do something about that. And I just made a step-by-step process for how am I going to clean this room. Well, that got some of the stuff off the floor. Now I'm going to put away the toys. Now I'm going to do this. And I must have been 4 or 5 years old when I came up with this. Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of thing we need to do, because when you have put off leadership, when you have deferred leadership for too long in your practice, so many issues build up that you don't know where to start, and it feels hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people want to bring a consultant in to tell them what to do and how to do, but they expect them to do.
Mm-hmm.
They're just going to give you that roadmap. They're going to tell you to fix your bed first, and if you can't drill down and do that and be introspective about why that problem began in the first place. And here's a clue, guys. It's always your fault.
Yeah.
Read Extreme Ownership. It is always your fault. You may not be to blame directly, but it is always your responsibility and it is your fault.
Yeah. I think that to add on top of that too is when you're looking for that change, or you want to have that help or that guidance or whatever it is, it has to start with you. You have to be the leader in your team, even if you've never been that leader before, and say, I recognize I'm not perfect. I don't know it all, but together we can do this. What do they say? If you've got 10 people in a room, like the answer is always there. A lot of our dental teams are pretty close to 10, so you probably do have the answers in there if you sit down and you listen and you take the time.
And ask.
And be invested.
Yeah.
I know some of you dentists, you hate meetings. Okay, that's because you're not having effective meetings. And I'll see clients that I have very effective meetings with, and I'll have others that I don't have effective meetings because it's the wild, wild west out there. But, it is what you make of it. And it has to start with you because you own it. Okay. It can't be everybody else but you.
So Gandhi once said, be the change you want to see in the world. What I tell people is be the change you want someone else to create in the world.
There you go. I love it.
Because if we always are saying someone should do such and such, it doesn't matter if it's an entrepreneurial journey. If you see a lack in dentistry, you notice, guys, I make a lot of companies. There's a reason. It's because I see things or I hear people go, man, someone should. And I think, why not me?
Yeah.
And I might fail at it, but man, Edison, he was asked in an interview, how does it feel to have failed 10,000 times to make a light bulb? So I didn't fail 10,000 times. I learned 10,000 ways not to do it.
Yes.
It's all mindset.
Yeah. It goes back to, from me being a kid and my mom, I've learned a lot, and my mom and I have a great relationship, and I can say it to her now, like she'll say things to me that are derogatory or towards that failure or whatever. And I just say to her, Mom, that isn't what I need to hear right now, or that isn't helping the situation. And I don't want to hear that. So please don't bring that into my space. Being able to say that is so liberating because she's just being a mom, she's telling me all of her fears and everything, but we're two very different people. We don't fear the same things. So same thing in your practices, or you've got all these personalities and stuff, use them to your benefit, not to that disadvantage in there. And when I see offices that have these laid back bosses and stuff, your practice is out of control. I already know that before I've even walked in the door, because when you're laid back, somebody else is jockeying for position. And when you're a tyrant, the team bands together and they work together because they're all protecting themselves from you. Is one better than the other? No, just recognize who you are and what you bring to the table.
One of my philosophies of management is determine your non-negotiables, because what you accept is what you will get.
Mm-hmm.
And the corollary to that is that people seek meaning and people seek value within themselves. So if you create a space where there's structure, because people are not going to like me hearing me say this, employees are like children. Children rebel when there's no structure. But children who live in a world where there's nothing but structure and they have no choices, they have no power, and they can't decide for themselves, they rebel even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to find that balance. So find your non-negotiables and stick to your guns.
Yeah.
Everything else, you can play it by ear. And then you can be the one that people say, oh, my boss is a great boss. They're so liberal and they let us, use our phones and yada, yada. My team will tell you they could use their phones at work. But the first thing I'd ask them is your duties list done? Fantastic. While you're on that call, while you're checking Facebook, make a post for the practice. It reminded them, hey, I'm at work, without beating them over the head. Because why? They'd done their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an SOP and you've got a job description and they've already finished the work you've paid them for the day and it's done well, then why are you being an ogre?
Yeah.
And if the work's not done well, then why aren't you enforcing your policies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that goes back to that accountability, and you're asking the questions. Did you do that? And a lot of times it never gets that far. Like I'll hear a dentist will say, oh my gosh, this happened. And it's like, well, what did you say? Well, I didn't say anything. Well, right there is the problem. And it goes back to what you said. You allowed this.
Mm-hmm.
When I teach,
it wasn't a non-negotiable.
It wasn't a non-negotiable. Yeah. When you teach your patients, it's the same thing. I say very similar. Nothing happens in this practice that you don't allow, because patients can't schedule themselves, unless you got online scheduling, but you still have control over that. So if you're allowing them to cancel their appointment and change them last minute, that's on you. It's not on them. They're not doing anything you're not allowing. So I equate it to training children or training like dogs.
Yep.
Right.
That was the second part of my statement that I didn't say. And children are just little animals.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I have an almost 2-year-old German Shepherd. She's completely out of control, crazy puppy. And why? Because we have never taken the time to sit and work with her consistently. I know what the problem is. The solution is, well, I got to find somebody to train this dog, or I got to take the time to do it. So, but really looking at that and what part do you play in it? Because no one is perfect.
I'm going to get in so much trouble, and this is going to be flagged on YouTube. You should remove this part in anything that you send out to anybody.
Okay.
Guys, if you don't want a 125-pound German Shepherd shitting in the middle of your living room, whenever they're a 20-pound puppy, you should bring them outside and show them where to shit. In other words, if you want employees who are going to provide the function that you've hired them to provide, you need to have job descriptions and written SOPs and standards and checks and balances and hold them accountable. Because if you don't do that, your living room is going to be a stinking mess. So is your practice.
Well, and here's the thing, because I gotta be honest, I hate SOPs. I understand the need for them.
We can disagree on that one.
But here's the thing. If you're going to have SOPs, make sure you update your SOPs as
No. Your team updates the SOPs.
Well, yes. When I say you, I mean your team. Or I'll have people, as they're doing the task, write the SOP. So one person isn't doing everything.
That's how I do it.
And then you also have to upkeep it, because it does no good for somebody to go in and pull out the list and go, oh, we don't even have that anymore.
Right.
It's not helping anybody. So
100%.
I love that. If you're going to do them, and when I'm like in a startup practice and stuff, I typically don't write them. I give them an outline of a system to follow, so that way that they've got it. But it's changing so fast inside of that practice. But it doesn't mean the team doesn't need guidance.
Right.
They do. They have to have something so that they know, where are we going, why, what's the why. So that's my soapbox SOPs. Because so many people, they write them and then they're stuck in a binder somewhere and nobody ever looks at them again until they pull them out. And then it's like, it's not going to work.
So that's one of the things that we did was we checklist manifesto. Got to have checklists. But what I realized is that there's a phenomenon called hobby horsing. People do the things that they most enjoy doing or least dread doing first. And so every list always ends up with things on the very bottom of the list that never get done. And they'll just live their eternal Methuselah lives down at the bottom of that list. So what we did is once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on the team and depending on the list, we'd have something called bottoms up day. Well, bottoms up is something you say when people take a drink, right? And so I had this idea one day that we had to do something about this list. All these things on the bottom were sitting there not getting done. And so on Thursdays, we would take the list and we'd flip it. And they had to work on the list from top to bottom. They could not go to the bottom first. They had to check everything off on the list. And then that afternoon, I'd say, okay, everybody meet me at Chili's. I'm going to buy you all one round. So they had something to look forward to after having tackled that drudgery. And that's just one of the things I did for the culture of my practice.
I like that. Yeah. So what I typically do is I put together time management schedules for them, and I make things bite-sized pieces. So I take it. So we're doing a little bit because people have this need to be done, so this is where lists are great. The problem in dentistry is it's ever revolving, especially at the desk, of things, because you've got another phone call, you've got another patient coming in, you've got to verify insurance, you've got to bill out the claim, you've got to track the claims. So it's like you're going to do this much, and when your time is up, you put it away and you move on, so that systematically they're getting done with a little bit of everything.
I love it.
Every day that they're working. And so you got a day, you're sick. Okay, so I'm not behind. I can come back. I can make up for one day really easily because we're talking a couple of phone calls and stuff. Statements once a week. Now everybody isn't getting a statement once a week, but this is so your payments come in. If anything's left over, which means your verifications weren't done very properly, but if you've got money left over that you need to balance bill out, then they should get that EOB and they should have something from you, ideally text, stop sending paper statements, so that way that they can pay you instead of waiting 30 days, then 30 days turns into 60 days because, something always happens and those statements don't go out and stuff. And next thing you know, it's 3 or 4 months later, somebody owes a balance that's stupid, but they don't remember why. And now you're putting all this work into it. Think how much money you pay your team members per hour. You're trying to collect a $50 balance. You probably surpassed that a couple months ago in what your team did to work on that instead of just having the system and letting it move for you. So bite-sized pieces is my hint on that with your lists. But I love the bottoms up too for if you use a list more like docs.
No, I love it. I love it. I was just thinking this could actually be a podcast we could do regularly where we have dentist call-ins and we just troubleshoot.
Yeah.
I
love that.
I want to think about that. But, oh man, that sparked an idea in me. I was going to, oh yeah, I remember collections letters. So something I found by accident, and I'll share it with you. After COVID, I got back in, I looked at our books, I did a deep dive, and I realized we had a lot of old AR, right? Accounts receivable, by the way, guys. In case you don't know what AR is, you should. And RCM, by the way, is revenue cycle management, which basically just means keep it on top of the things that people owe you and you owe them. So one of the things that we did is we pulled all the old reports, and I said, okay, I know you guys look at your 30, 60, 90, and I want you to look at 90. I want you to look at 180 days and more. Well, we have a lot of those, but they're so old, Doc. I mean, some are 3 and 4 years old. I said, I want to see all those right now. And what it was I was trying to put out some positivity in the world, and I didn't realize what I stumbled on here. So I did not do this on purpose, but I capitalized on it later when I realized the power of it. So I had them print out all those statements, and I thought to myself, I said, probably these people who haven't paid us, either they hate our guts or they just can't afford to pay us. And one more thing, whether it's on their mind still or not, because I grew up very poor, and I know anytime I owed someone something, it was always weighing on my mind. People don't need that right now. And let's face it, if someone's 180 days or more in arrears, they're not paying you.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I sent a forgiveness letter instead of emails and texts. And I signed each letter personally because I wanted to make sure I took ownership of the fact that these people hadn't paid us, because that meant I wasn't doing my job as a CEO. And so there was literally $150,000 that people owed us that I wasn't aware of because I was only looking at 30, 60, 90 in the amounts. And so we sent out these letters, and what they said was, we realized that times are difficult and the world is kind of in chaos, and we just wanted to put out a little bit of kindness in the world. We understand a lot of you simply can't afford to pay these bills. So I want you to know I am forgiving them. Yours, Dr. Huffpower. So do you know what happened?
Those patients came back.
Some of them came back as undeliverable, which told me I had a systems issue with making sure people's addresses were updated. So we called the numbers on file and we updated those. What else happened?
Well, I still think that, that sparked people to talk about you and how you help them and who you are as an individual.
I got a lot of new patients. And a lot of dentists out there will say, oh, well, those patients probably couldn't pay their bills either. Yeah, but now I had standards where they paid me before they scheduled. And so that wasn't an issue. And the third thing that happened, we got 3 angry calls. F you this and F you that for saying I can't afford to pay my bills. And my front desk handled it with great aplomb. She said, sir, we are so sorry. We didn't mean to intimate that at all. Would you like to come in and get that paid?
Yeah.
And they did. We actually ended up receiving $75,000 in unexpected income because people were grateful and all of a sudden put us to the top of their list. People had forgotten they owed the bill and came in to pay, or people were ashamed and angry that we were implying they were too poor to pay their bills. They damn well knew about these bills, and some of them were 3 years late. And so that taught me a whole lot. And so I made it a standard practice in my office. It mainly happened whenever we were dealing with the couple of insurances that we had that we were still dealing with. And we didn't get paid from the insurance. It was actually, if you remember, when the disallows came through, that's when it was. And for those patients, we had been collecting ahead of time, just like we always do. But then all of a sudden, the dental insurance company said, "Oh, you can't collect at all."
Yeah.
So, and I said, "Well, I'm OON, so I can do the F I want."
That's right.
So, anyway, all that being said, it worked like magic. And it was something I never thought of.
Yeah.
But I was smart enough to look at it and go, okay, why did this happen? How can we make this thing be good for us? And what systems can we create that will carry this forward in a productive manner?
Yeah.
So
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's all about the system and the follow through. It's as easy as that.
One means nothing without the other.
Yeah. But the problem is we want the system to just work. And then it's like, but we just had, the exceptions, the 80-20 rule. If it's less than 20% of the time, I'm not worried. But when you let those exceptions become the rule, you've lost all control.
Absolutely.
In there. And like you said, you weren't looking at those. Well, it's pretty easy to hide that stuff inside of your, if I move it to a different billing type, it's not going to even pull on those reports if I'm not bringing in those.
Exactly.
Very easy to not know. Or I think it's Dentrix. If you don't, maybe it's EagleSoft. I can't remember now, but one of them, if you don't pull the credits out and start from zero, it will subtract the credits from because it's trying to give you like that actual, but at the end of the day, it's like, here's how much money people owe you, but you owe this much in credits. They don't really cancel out the other because you owe this, whether you collect this.
You put your finger on it. So check it out. Here's what happened. We started my practice on Dentrix and then did a conversion to Open Dental, and all that data vanished.
Yep.
Until you went looking for it in the reports. And so I stumbled on it not knowing that. I researched it afterwards to find out what had happened, but you were absolutely correct. It was because of a conversion.
Well, and that's one thing. I know a lot of PMSs. So, sadly, let's talk embezzlement for a second, but so many dentists get embezzled upon and they have no clue that it's happening. And it's because of the way that some of these PMSs report things. If you've got somebody who's smart enough, sometimes they're not very smart at all, but they just figured out how to hide it. And you've got no clue what's going on in there.
Not just that. They don't run audit trails.
Oh, yes.
And they don't set the permissions correctly for each employee.
I
Huge
just
problem.
encountered a practice, had no permissions. There was no passwords set up at all because the Dentrix trainer told them it would be easier that way if they didn't. I was like, no. And DIVA forced them to have passwords set up.
Right.
So they had to put them in place in this particular practice. But you are opening yourself up. Like, I can tell you, if you've got the rights to delete an audit trail inside a Dentrix, it can't get done. So if somebody who's doing something nefarious has the permissions and knows they can delete something, you can't see it.
So you grew up on DOS like I did.
Mm-hmm.
So in DOS, an audit trail creates an audit trail. But in Dentrix, it does not.
Uh-huh.
Which is funny because Dentrix was based in MS-DOS whenever it first came out.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Dentrix is actually like 6 different programs that have just been taped together with duct tape.
Yeah, EagleSoft's the same way because one time I had a problem inside of, I was on EagleSoft for years and we had a problem. And when I called support, they're like, oh, it's because they're 2 different modules and they're not compatible with each other. And I was like,
what?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Right.
Like, it's the same program. But we see that in a lot of different things. When companies acquire another company, like DI acquired Modento. I know this because I've used DI and I worked at DI for a while. And but the programming are completely different.
So you recognize my profitability formula, don't you?
I definitely recognize that profitability formula.
I learned that from Wes Lunsford, actually.
Yeah. Well, and now it's standard.
Oh, good.
It's right. It's a tab on there.
That's fantastic.
But but the way that the 2 were built, they're built different, and they're trying to put them into so that analytics and engagement are all on one desktop. But that's been one of the challenges that they've had is because they're programmed differently. And we don't. Again, I didn't want to know any of the stuff about technology that I know. And I just kind of fell in, and me being that sponge who wanted to learn, I'm like, well, why? I'm the person, if I call support, I'm asking for a level 2 off the get-go. Cause trust me, I've tried everything that you're going to tell me to do already on top of that. So
at the risk of getting sued, if you were advising a practice owner who is just starting their practice, what PMS should they choose? I know I have my favorites, but you've worked with a lot of them simply through your consulting. What are the benefits and deficits of each if you'd prefer doing it that way?
So hands down, Open Dental is who I recommend.
Best damn reporting in the industry.
I'm telling you. The functionality, and I'm looking at it from a practice management standpoint, the functionality of what it can do, because it was the first one that had the capability to put a PPO fee schedule on a treatment plan, but you don't have to assign it inside of the ledger, so you can do your own write-offs.
And it has an accessible blue book.
Yes. But people don't know how to use it. Why? Because here's the problem in conversions. I'm going to get on my soapbox a second about PMSs, and then I'll tell you my number 2 fave. Is you have to understand that data. So like when I do a conversion, I'm like, what can I omit? Because the last thing I want to do is get this beautiful, brand new, clean PMS and bring a bunch of junk into it, right? But that's what we do.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Yep. And we don't understand the impact of what we're bringing in. And I'm going to tell you a secret that most of you you probably haven't figured out yet, but the tech companies have no clue because they're not dental people. They built a program, but they don't know how it works in reality. Like I have actually been hired before from a PMS company. It's coming up and stuff. But when I got hired into it, he said, I want you to break it and tell me everything that's wrong with it.
Was that Jonathan?
No.
We'll talk off air.
Yeah. But, but the way it was built brilliantly. But the problem was it was built for like somebody who was an accountant to do the ledger side of it. And it was so difficult. I'm like, listen, front desk people are going to find the fastest way to do something. They're not going to follow these protocols.
And it's often wrong. And here's why, because all of these things are written in different modules, depending, and this is going to blow your minds, guys. I know you already know this. Depending on what page you are in Dentrix, it will take 3 or 16 clicks to get to the same exact function. Here's what's even more concerning. They reference different SQL databases, which means you can ask for your productivity in one and get one number, and ask for it in a different page and get a different damn number. Crap in, crap out.
Well, it's almost like EagleSoft. When EagleSoft was built, it's like, okay, we're not going to do that. But now with EagleSoft, some of the reports come standard in net numbers and some come standard in gross numbers. So people will look at things and they'll go, these don't match. And it's like, because you're not comparing apples to apples.
Right.
And they don't understand that impact or what it's doing inside of there. And quite honestly, the training that we get, it doesn't teach you that kind of stuff anyway. The worst thing that can happen in the entire world is you get this new software. You've had this conversion. Somebody comes in and teaches you 1 or 2 days how to use it. Then they go live one day and they leave. That's your training. Okay, well, in that new PMS, you're talking 24 hours if you're getting EFTs from Delta to 30 days later when insurance checks are coming in and I'm supposed to remember how to post those insurance checks. It's 6 months before my recare picks up if it didn't bring in your recare due date. So now I got to remember how to run. You know, it doesn't make sense, all this training. It's no wonder we don't know how to use our PMSs instead of being like, okay, we're going to train you this here. And then now a week later, okay, you're going to start getting in EFTs. We're going to start teaching you how to post payments. That's how I teach people in conversions because they're going to lose that. They don't retain any of that information 6 months later. Nobody wants to say that, right? So somebody's like, I think you do it like this. And somebody else is like, oh, and I remember that you go here. And all of a sudden now we've realized there's 4 different ways to do the exact same thing. But some of those clicks add in a little different feature or whatever. So you got to be careful with all those PMSs. I'm not going to tell you Open Dental doesn't do that too. It does. I like Open Dental merely from the front desk. It's the fact that I can have that PPO fee schedule in there and the way that it reports in an estimate. My number 2 is actually CareStack, which is the cloud. I have never been a fan of cloud because it has always felt so far behind. Like people, I worked with an office once. They went from Dentrix to Dentrix Ascend. They went backwards 10 years. Sorry, Dentrix Ascend, but the functionality just wasn't there when they did this. This was several years ago. Yes, Dentrix Ascend has come forward, but some of these cloud programs, they don't have some of those features that you really want or need, or the reporting. And yeah, you can build your own reports, but you're talking people who can barely function inside of a PMS. Now you want them to build a report looking at different queries in coding language. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. So in support, you got to look at where the support is on these different PMSs as well. But in terms of what they can report back to you, ease of use, I was really pleasantly surprised about CareStack. I had seen it a few years ago. I wasn't impressed. But recently I helped a practice inside of it, and I like the functionality of it.
It seems to be one of the things that's always a lagging indicator on the growth and health of a PMS is how the financial reporting matures.
Yeah.
I know I got involved with Archie early on in its inception, and seeing how they have changed and gotten much more robust in their reporting gives me really, honestly, I have great hopes for them. I think Jonathan is fantastic. And
I've met one of his reps. I haven't met him, but I've seen in
Archie.
Yeah, I've seen it. I think that It's a little, for me, I love
basic.
what it's doing. It's a little too basic.
Mhm.
Yeah. But there's some practices that will work great for, and then you can move into it, and such. And I think that's the other thing. It's like you get this big bad program and nobody on your team knows how to work with something like that.
It doesn't matter.
It isn't going to help you.
We're going to buy a CBCT. Do you do implants? Nope. It's not a good investment.
I encountered a dentist once. He had a CBCT machine, and I was like, why don't we take a CBCT on every new patient?
Yeah, and you pull off a pano, you charge for the pano because you're not going to get paid for the CBCT.
Right.
Technically, because it's an extra oral x-ray, it is still a pano, and it is still found the same way. Same thing with a Seth. You can do so many things with them that people don't understand, and they don't bill correctly, and instead they try to get the patient to pay for a CBCT. The patient gets pissed off, and
Well, and here's the thing. What's $300 for a CBCT when you can look and go, oh, I can see a fracture on that. Let's do it before you fracture the whole thing and you need a root canal.
Right.
Like all these different things that it can show you and what it can help do. It's invaluable. But this particular doctor felt that it devalued his practice to do that. Okay. Personal choice on there, but it's like,
how?
I don't know.
Some wrong-headed ideas there.
But it's like, again, you paid all this money for this machine and it's sitting there.
Getting back to open dental, reason I brought up the blue book, I have a trick.
Okay, what's your trick?
You may have already figured this one out. So a lot of people are paying other companies to manage their DSPs, dental savings plans.
Mm-hmm.
If you just build it into the frequencies and create your own plan, all you have to do then is track when patients have paid and when they haven't. And you can actually have that as a reoccurring charge and automatically bill them to make sure they stay current.
So interesting. I've never used the blue book for that, but
you see how it can be done, though,
absolutely.
right? Just from
but
building out a plan.
I'm the same way. I'm like, why pay somebody to manage your DSP? You can do it in house. It's not difficult.
It's super easy. All you have to do is understand what your DSP is. I mean, what is the frequency on fully covered exams?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is the percent off of your UCR of ortho, scaling, root planing?
Yep.
You know, and then you just create your own custom table of major versus minor or what have you. It's already built into the system.
Yeah. It's super easy to use. And I think that's what I like about Open Dental is because they integrate with so many companies. So when you've got this tech out there that you love or you favor, it's probably going to integrate inside of there in some capacity. So it makes it very easy. And you have to go through less culture shock at one time when you switch. My
favorite thing is because I came from, DOS, because I went through Windows 3.1 all the way. So I was used to the menus, and they use the exact same menu structure. And no matter where you are in the system, the menu structure is always the same, which meant I only had to train people one time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they could go from working the back to the front or front to back, and they knew where everything was. So, I mean, they might not know how to run a report if they're an assistant, but they knew how to schedule a patient.
Mm-hmm.
Or they knew, where do I find that code? It's the same place in every single screen. So I think now is a great time to talk a little bit about what you're doing now. We've gone so far afield, and my apologies. Usually these are very well structured, but we had so many really cool epiphanies and stories, and I think real Easter eggs for people who listen to this podcast that I wanted to go with that. I want to ask you, after all this experience and doing all these things, what was it that specifically drove you to make this change you've made now to become a member of the DIVA team?
So I met the dental robot owner,
Manuel Barrasso.
He's amazing. His wife is a pediatric dentist.
Mm-hmm.
So I met him back before COVID, 2019, and it was to do some help for his office. In the meantime, he's telling me about these robots that he's building and the work that he's doing.
You're
and
hard pressed to get him to not tell you about the robots. He gets so excited about
he
them.
does. And it's because they're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different premise than probably any other company that I've ever seen out there. Very early, when I saw what he was doing, I was like, this is the future of dentistry. Now, were there bumps and bruises for him along the way? Absolutely. But I've watched this company. We worked together. I had a DSO that I was working with, a small one for the billing company that I had. We brought Manuel in. It didn't work. However, it didn't work because the platform didn't work. It didn't work because the expectation wasn't set to the client properly. That was my failure because I didn't do that piece. I let somebody else do it. And, we live and we learn, right? So, but I still saw these robots. I have begged for them because they weren't in the independent space at all. The cost of them, too much, and it just wasn't where independent dentists would be able to use them. But I knew this was the piece that we needed because they could get accurate breakdowns because I'd seen the breakdowns from the beginning. So Manuel and I had kept in touch. I would reach out or I'd see him on social media or something like that. And like, hey, how are things going? Any chance that this is in the independent space? And I reached out earlier this year and I said, listen, please, I will just take a canned robot, meaning one that, no customization. Just give me let me, I just need one for Dentrix, one for EagleSoft, one for Open Dental. And he was like, Tonya, I can't, no. So
Little did I know that there was already something in the works. And it was probably late May. He reached out to me and said, hey, because he knew I wanted to be in the pedo space and stuff. What he didn't know was my kids, they're really sick of mom traveling. My youngest is 9 and I've been doing it since she was 6 months old. That's when I started out on my own. And because I love that and my husband is amazing and he stayed with the kids. So, and now they know how to set teeth.
He does let them, when the lab was in our house, when we had one, they did. I would tell people when they came over, I'm like, I promise those are not real teeth when you'd find them around our house. So Manuel called me and said, hey, he said, AI has brought us to the point where we can put these in the independent space. We've got a company. And he goes, I think you would be great. I'd love you to come work with us. And he's like, I think it'll help you build and consulting and stuff. And I said, I'm really at the point where I'm okay if I hang up my consulting shoes, and come do this for you. And he was like, come on. And I said, yeah. I said, I've been waiting for this. And he was telling me all the things that DIVA could do. And I was just blown away because it could do so much more than what I saw it do several years ago. And he was telling me what they were doing in the DSO space. And I was like, wow. Well, the other thing is my systematic analytic mind. I was like, oh, and we can automate this and we can, he's like, you need to calm down and write a wish list.
He tells us the same thing, at the point that, that he brought you up, which by the way, he was super, super excited, like on cloud 9. We had been working on on DIVA for 2 years.
That's what he told me.
Yeah. So why specifically insurance verification though? What about that? Why is that such a critical piece?
So I have always taught insurance verification as it's the starting point. If you verify the insurance and you have the proper data up front, everything else is so much easier because you know how much to put in the estimate, you know how much money to collect, and you know how your insurance companies are going to pay. Makes it really easy to work the system. Proactive. I'm very proactive in the way that I do things. So having AI agents that could effectively go get the same benefits, because I have been involved in other companies when they're like, hey, what do you think about this? And at the time, like people were syncing up with Vine and, oh, they're going to get real-time benefits. You push a button and you get this. I love Vine for many, many reasons. However, that breakdown, I think you need a degree in insurance verification, and I consider myself very good, and it's difficult for me to read. So yes, you could get information, but the information wasn't reliable. It wasn't always accurate. It was very difficult to understand. It was open up to a lot of interpretation. So with DIVA, it was like I had seen the forms before. The forms had been enhanced, and you're getting a verification at the code level with frequencies, exceptions, limitations inside of it. Oh, and by the way, we went and got it from the portals, just like I would get it or the team would get it. And it's not that real time spinning. You're going to have it in a couple of seconds. But what would you rather have? Fast information or accurate information? And so when they said that they needed somebody to come in and lead the program, I was like, I'm in, hands down, I'm in. Because I believe truly in my heart, since I found out about these almost 7 years ago, this is the missing piece of dentistry that dental offices need to help take that heat off, because we're slaves to the insurance company. As much as we want to say that, oh, we don't let insurance dictate or whatever, we are jumping through hoops for them. And I am able to be part of something that makes those hoops a heck of a lot easier. And it helps the teams, which is what I've always wanted to do, is just help dentists.
Yeah, absolutely. For people who don't get it, why is automation in the back office so critical?
So when using automation, like with something, one, you're taking the human aspect out of it, of human errors, right? We make mistakes. It gets busy. The phone rings. I forget to put something in. And those little hiccups or those little errors can have a huge impact on your estimates, on, when those patients come in, if you don't know service history, things like that, they're easy to overlook. And there's a lot to look at. But to have something that once it's trained, it will go in and do it on repeat consistently every time. It doesn't make mistakes because it can only do what it's programmed to do. Though it's using AI, it's not training AI. So it's doing what it is set to do, nothing more. It's not looking for anything. And it doesn't get sick. It doesn't take vacations. And really, the ROI, we've just built this really cool ROI calculator to help show doctors it costs way less than what the team members cost to do it, which means people ask me all the time, so I can replace a team member. I never tell people to fire anybody. That's not me. But I'm like, look at the things you're not getting done. Are you working your outstanding treatment plans and your overdue recare?
How much more money is that going to bring in?
Exactly. If you're not using DIVA and making money off of it, you're not using it the right way. So
absolutely, 100%. You made a good point there in that it's not an LLM.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so it's not a large language model, I should say. So the difference there is that it is simply using very advanced algorithms, which is all that any artificial intelligence is. And it is doing a very prescripted way of getting insurance verification.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is it doesn't forget things. It doesn't do it the way it wants to do it or the way its previous boss told it to do it. It enters the information the same way all the time. All that sounds so basic and so dumb, and it sounds like, why would I need something to do this? But having done consulting for me at least, and I know that we've seen the insides of these books. And, I made a joke earlier about junk in, junk out, but it's true. If you have trash data, you get trash results. But even more than correct data is important. Consistency of data is even more important than whether or not your data is healthy. So one of the things that we decided to do with DIVA is we give you the choice. I don't love the idea because you're not going to have as good of an outcome as possible. But we give you the choice. Does the DIVA team go in and rebuild everything from scratch? Or do we let you keep sailing with the trash data you've got. I will tell you, and I know you agree with this, they should get the data rebuilt and get it done correctly, because then their estimates are going to all be correct. But having the information put in consistently from point, Z forward, it's so game changing. It really is.
Let me paint a picture for you. So, and I had this conversation with somebody in a call recently, and what had happened was they chose to not have the information built from the ground up, meaning we build your group plans brand new for you. They wanted us correctly. They wanted us to edit what was in the system. Okay, so if we're editing the group plans you already have, your team still has the ability to go in and add something and completely change that group plan while DIVA's trying to build it. So if you let them build it from the ground up, when you go in to select, everybody that's inside that new group plan has been fully verified, and it's been looked at to make sure that's the plan that they belong into. But in these other ones, when you're editing, if somebody says, let's say it's Target and they've got 2 different plans, and you go in and they're like, this isn't right. And so one of your plans is 180/50, the other one's 90/70/40. And you update the one. Well, all of this verified information that was put in there, because it's editable and we're working through it, now that they've just changed that full breakdown, all those percentages for the people that were verified accurately. So you have created a bigger mess. Can DIVA clean that? Yeah, DIVA can keep cleaning that up. But at what point, instead of teaching your team how to look properly for these? I mean, I've been in hundreds of dental offices, and looking in the backside of that insurance module, when I see, the same delta in there 20 times, and
Delta's the worst.
Delta's the worst because they don't understand that, well, this Delta processes for 11 states and this Delta only processes 1 state. And yeah, you can go to Delta INS.
But it says it's Delta of California. That can't be right for it to be processing for this state.
Right. And it's like,
it is.
Or it's like, oh, we can go to the national website and get all of our benefits. No, you can't, because it's wrong 50% of the time. Yeah. Again, it's where are we getting that data? DIVA knows over 300 different portals where to pull it from. And then it rebuilds those groups. It's only adding them into those group plans after they've been verified and knows. And if you accidentally stick one in, like I tell people all the time, oh, you don't know which target they're on, just stick them in one of the plans. When DIVA verifies it, DIVA's going to go, oh, you don't belong there, and it's going to move it for you.
Yeah. If I had my way, I would make it to where dental teams couldn't interact with that book at all. And I know people don't like hearing us say that or hearing me say that. But there's just, how long are you going to let someone drill holes in the bottom of your boat while you're bailing? Mm-hmm. And it frustrates me. And I know that each owner has their own responsibilities and their own vision, but my vision is very, very simple. And the reason I started this project to begin with is very simple. I told you that we charged patients before they would schedule.
Yeah.
There's only one way that we could do that. I had a very, very good team doing my insurance verifications. They were right every single time.
Yep.
And we collected what was owed every single time to the penny. I would bet a lot of money most dental practices, I would say 95%, cannot do that with the data they've got in their books. But the truth is that if they let DIVA take care of it, and if they allow it to rebuild the books and stop touching them, they could do this. And they would have less upset patients. They would lose less patients. Because let's face it, most dental practices are on this quest to get the most new patients possible. And the reason is all of their patients are leaving by the back door.
Yep.
And new patients are the least profitable for your practice. Yep. They have the least amount of trust in you. They're going to do the least amount of work because they don't trust you. Old patients are where it's at, folks. Mm-hmm. Keeping your old patients, making them happy, and making the experience as seamless as possible, man, that is priceless. And it will grow your practice. It'll make you profitable. It'll make you wealthy, and it'll make you stress less.
I was at a practice here in Texas, big state, here in Texas. They were seeing 150 new patients a month. 150. Their growth was negative 100. Why? Because they were losing 250 patients per month because they weren't retaining them. So all that work that they were doing to get those 150 new patients in, which created a ton of havoc in their schedule, is they're burning it because it was just flowing right out the back end. And presented, this was consulting, presented DIVA to them and couldn't see the vision, thought it was, oh, well, we just need to fire people. You're trying to take away people's jobs. No, I'm trying to give you time to work on the things that should be worked on.
Customer retention.
But, again, there was other things going on in that practice there, and it was, it didn't work effectively. They decided to part ways with me because, they didn't really want to make the changes that needed to be made in order to get the desired outcomes that they wanted to have. So, don't let your teams shy you away from this. This product isn't trying to replace your team by any capacity. It should give them time. It should give them time. It should give them the answers that they're not getting anyway. I talk to teams all the time that they're like, we're not even verifying insurance. It's like, so you're blindly going in to these patients and their billing's got to be out of control.
It is. I'd love to see what their AR looks like.
And, the out of network, I have a lot of out of network conversations that I have. We can't get the fee schedule that they're on. But we can still get those benefits. I know, I didn't know whether I could say that or not. But we can still get those accurate benefits. And if you use your Blue Books, you will learn from every patient that you see what the fee is, the allowable. So it's like the PMSs aren't learning, but I call it learning. But anybody, if you are out of network, just set up your Blue Books and make sure you're documenting those fees, and everybody else attached to it, it's going to know, oh, okay, so the allowable is $975 for a crown. Well, now we know what the allowable is on crowns for every single person in that plan. And
I'm gonna go a step further, and if the devs yell at me, it's okay because I'm the boss. So we are trying to build a system right now, and we are currently doing it using dentists who are in network with most insurance plans, and we're assessing their out-of-network EOBs that they do receive back, and we are creating Blue Books for different regions because it's a very regional thing. It goes by zip code. In fact, some zip codes have multiple different paying schema in them. And so, and anything that I make a mistake on, since you're closer with the dev team, correct me. But by getting more out-of-network dentists involved in this project, what's going to happen is because they're out-of-network with all of these insurance plans, it builds our database much, much more quickly. But it's not just about building the Blue Book, because there are maximums that you can charge, and not all dentists are charging the maximum. And so by assessing this data, we can do an assay that we can create a maximum fees, and we can change the dental industry, because then everyone who uses our product will be able to know exactly the maximum they can get from MetLife or from Universal Healthcare, or United Healthcare rather, or
any of them
except for Delta, because Delta's
Delta
absolute garbage. But that's the great thing about this, and I guess they can even really assess what Delta does as well. It's just there's so many Deltas, it's going to take a long time to build that backlog up. But guys, this is the future as far as I'm concerned. After I retired, I looked at dentistry and I said, what things made me want to cry? And dental insurance verification was one of them. So I built a dental building company first. The only people who wanted to buy our services were DSOs. And they still do almost all the ESO. I don't have any part in the management of that company anymore. But the sad truth is that the people who need it most see the least value in it, and that is private practice.
Well, it's deemed expensive, and it's a threat to whomever your insurance coordinator is or your office manager, because they're typically your financial and insurance coordinator.
Is a CBCT a threat to an implant surgeon?
Well, no, but doesn't mean that everybody views it that way. There's the problem that lies.
They need to. So I want you to talk to me. You've been with the team a while now, and you see the front lines, whereas I don't. I'm pretty much the mad scientist in the background going, oh, and we can do this. Oh, and we can do this. I'm sure Manny's complained. And then the dev team has to figure out how exactly we're going to do it. Or sometimes they tell me, no, Dr. Huppard, we can't do that. We have too many other things to do right now. But we have some big plans. How have you seen DIVA actually fundamentally change the culture, the revenue, and the sanity within a practice?
Gosh, we have so many different scenarios that I've seen start to finish now. I've got a couple of practices that currently have no front desk. And no front desk means the dentist and the dental assistant are the ones that are doing this. And it's like, well, it's pretty hard to make money producing when you're spending your time getting benefits and things of that nature. So DIVA's doing all of that
and
for
doing
them.
A more accurate job than
well, they didn't even know who they were in network with, and they had no idea how to even access the portals, and we can create all that for them. So we just went in and created the access and then gave them, because we're underneath, a lot of people think, oh, you're going to create access, we're going to lose control of ours. No, you keep all of your access, because a lot of them will let you have more than one user. So both of us can get into the portals. The nice thing is DIVA handles the 2FA. The 2FA is such a pain. And
okay, explain 2FA, because a lot of them
that
don't know what it is.
multi-factor or two-factor authorization. So however you have it set up, that the insurance company is double checking and make sure it's you that's going inside of it. Well, DIVA is just another team member on your team is all that it is. It's going in there. So we have two-factor as well. But the team has to deal with that unless they let us bypass them on that, or we'll create our own credentials. And then the ones we can only have one user, we share the credentials. Big thing there is we have to just make sure that there's communication if a password changes inside of that.
When the insurance company tells you to change your password, which they do all the time, you have to communicate it to us or we're locked out of the system.
And we have a team that, sometimes we know faster than, and they'll email you, hey, we can't get in as soon as it happens. So we have an entire team that helps protect that and to communicate with the practices. So, because we want to be down as little as possible. I have offices that'll say to me, it's not verifying this insurance company, or it's not verifying this insurance company. I'm like, have you received any emails from my team? Oh, yeah, but I haven't been paying attention. Well, we have to make sure that we're answering those, because that's how we're accessing.
That's actually both a really good thing and a bad thing, because it tells me that the teams have gotten to the point where they realize DIVA is doing such a good job that they're just like, woohoo, we're free. They've got to check those emails though, because it keeps us being able to do our job.
Well, and because we're accessing these the right way. We're not just pulling data from a clearinghouse or something, which is why that data is wrong. We're actually going into the portals just like the team would. So we have to make sure that, we're maintaining that relationship that we have, because we're an extension of your team. There, we've got all the BAAs for that and everything, so that we're in compliance. But it's just like, if you didn't fill it out in your office, your teammate can't work. Well, we're your teammates and we can't work if we don't get that information. So that's probably one of the best things that I've seen is in those situations. Or, an office manager just up and left and they did everything and nobody knows how to get in or do it. Well, DIVA can help get past all of that stuff for you, yet you're still in control, because we're an extension of you. We're a user underneath your account. So people think that, DIVA is going to have all this information, and they're not going to have. You have access to everything, because again, we're on your team doing this service. The right back part of it is huge that we just released, that customization to not have to get used to a different workflow, that we can train the AI agent to do it the same way you do it in your office. Now, there's not a lot of ways to do it, right?
Well, unless the way you're doing it is wrong.
Unless the way you're doing it is wrong. So we give you, some guidance in there to choose. But for most practices, when I talk to them, they're like, DIVA can do that too. Yeah. If it's a repetitive task with the same rules, DIVA can do it. You just can't have these willy-nilly rules like, well, sometimes we do this and sometimes we do that. DIVA can't understand that. It has to have a solid rule that goes with it, kind of like your SOP is.
Absolutely. So SOPs are awesome.
I do hate them when they change, though.
Well, they just have to change with the needs. So if you go to Baskin Robbins, you can get 1,400 different flavors of ice cream. Do you remember whenever there were 42 flavors of ice cream when we were kids? It's 1,400 now.
Wow.
So with DIVA, we don't quite have that much selection, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, really, sometimes people don't even know what it is that they need.
Right.
What you need is Advanced Pro. I'm going to tell you, if you are a specialty office with some obscure PMS, you need Advanced Light, because you're not using those features of the PMS anyway.
And there's no reason to pay for them if you're not using them.
Exactly. But if you've got one of the big boy, and we really can work with any PMS that's out there because of how we work with them. And this can just do that role for you. Pull an audit trail. You can see exactly what DIVA did. You never have to wonder, what is it inside of there? And we probably know the insurance companies better than most practices know the insurance companies, or know other portals that we can go to and get information and get more. Because DIVA is a web portal service at its core. So it's what can we get from the web portals? But being able to have that where it's going to write back the features, and people ask me all the time, it does frequency limitations. It does exceptions. It does, service history on there. It's pulling all that detail. You're more limited by your PMS than the details that we give you. You're in network with a bunch of PPOs. It'll tell you how you're in network with that plan, because by knowing which network you're in, how you're in network with it, knows which fee schedule it's on there. We can do the fee schedule too. That typically requires our call center team. That is an add-on that you can, if you don't have time in your office to call for things, but we have that as support available as well.
Okay. So I want you to walk me through. I'm a practice owner. I know I need DIVA Advanced, but let's talk about all the different offerings.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Basic.
Yep.
We've got Advanced Light, and we have Advanced Pro.
Yep.
What do each of them do?
So DIVA Basic is just the verification side of things.
Okay. So what does it spit out? What do you get?
So you get that full breakdown, or you get an eligibility check, which is a portal snapshot with it. So we have a dashboard. We extract the information from the PMS. It goes into a dashboard that's just for your practice. Then inside of there, you can see day by day every patient, including patients that you may have on a discount plan or cash patients as well. So you know that DIVA didn't miss anybody. DIVA is going to verify 5 business days in advance, 3 business days, and 1 business day. So you're picking up those 6-month recall patients, but then you're also picking up any changes within that week if you're scheduling, your schedule isn't out that far.
So talk to me about emergencies.
Oh, emergencies. Well, so DIVA does not do same-day verifications. Here's why. Because we'd have to use clearinghouse data, which we know is incorrect 30% of the time or more. However, I have this cool little workaround that I teach people all the time. DIVA verifies 1 day in advance. So you just create an insurance appointment for tomorrow and put it on your schedule tomorrow, and then DIVA will verify today. Now, there's no guarantee that it will be in there while your patient is there, but you can deliver a treatment plan to them less than 24 hours after their appointment. So depends on your workflow. And I help people with their workflow as we're putting this stuff in place. So if your doctor is somebody who's going to script them and get them back if it's an emergency, that workflow works well. If you're going to start treatment same day, then your team may have to pull a verification and just get the information that you need on the fly. The next time they're in the schedule, DIVA will verify it for you.
All right. If any of the devs are listening, I just want you to know I am not the one who did this. This was entirely Tonya. So you guys get to fuss at her. So,
And see, this is the problem. I know this stuff too well. So I'm like, oh, let me tell you the secrets.
okay. So let's talk about DIVA Pro.
Okay. So we have Advanced, DIVA Advanced. So we have DIVA Advanced Lite, which is the verification side with the dashboard. And then it will upload the full breakdown and or the eligibility check to your PMS, name it the way you want it named, and it will put a templated note of the full breakdown into your chart notes. Okay. This is the one that I said is good for those obscure specialties. I don't really see how it's going to be helpful for a practice that wants to be able to estimate benefits and do treatment plan estimates. Okay, but it's an option for those that don't have that option in their PMS. So then we have Advanced Pro, which is the full customization and full write back. So it's going to be the dashboard. You always get that. It's going to upload it into your PMS. It's going to name it what you want named. Then it's going to write back the details into the insurance module down to the code level. So, an Open Dental it can put all those exceptions and everything in. DIVA can do all of those for you. You've got Dentrix that you can put all that stuff in, but it really isn't impacting your estimates. You can still have all of that in. So whichever PMS it is, it's going to put it into the capabilities that it can, or with any nuances that you've added to it as well. In addition with Pro, and this is a couple of things that I love, and this might have been me that said we could do this, but I know it can be done. So you've got a patient communication program and you're doing insurance updates or forms online, and a patient comes up that's termed, DIVA can be programmed then to go into the patient communication program and shoot out a text or an email with your pre-written verbiage and a form or not asking for updated insurance for you. So it can be that first line of defense instead of your team having to watch the portal, which isn't hard. It's very easy to read. It can also, this is one thing as a consultant, I'm like, don't you dare waste your time doing that, which is to put all the notes on the hygiene appointments of what they're eligible for, right? But inevitably in every practice it is the hygienist runs to the front desk and is like, can I take a pano today? Can I take bite wings today? And then they're standing there, everybody's scrambling, trying to get this information. Complete waste of time, not to mention the patient's been left in there. What if the hygienist had that at their fingertips every single appointment? DIVA can do that. So those are two of probably the coolest features that Advanced Pro can do. And we're working on some more.
Okay, devs, that was not my fault, but this is. We should actually talk to the devs and have them build something called hygiene peekaboo or something like that.
Okay.
Where the hygienist can click on a single button and it goes boom.
Oh, it pops out at them?
Yeah.
Oh,
and then
I
they
like
can actually
that.
use that for their morning huddle. They can say, patient, bop, 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 bop. Hey, make sure you add the pano here. Make sure you do this. Make sure you do this. That way we're making sure we're helping the team's culture by systemizing information changing between the back and the front.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, DIVA can add the codes if you want it to. Now, remember, you're still responsible for your notes. Doctors have got to diagnose the need for the x-rays or whatever. But if you want that stuff as a reminder, it can go on there as well.
Ultimately, what I'd like to do is automate a lot of these processes. Right now, we're just making sure that we're working well and friendly-like with all the different PMSs.
I had a doctor ask me, and I think that this one's ingenious, so I'm throwing it out there because I'd love to see this as like DIVA Pro Plus, something of where then DIVA will go back in, because some of the PMSs, you have to click a button to re-update the treatment plan to make sure that when something got changed, if it was entered before the insurance, to re-up it, for DIVA to do that for the practices. So that way, if there's any changes in those, the team can be alerted and then be able to contact the patient and let them know based on the verification.
I love it. There's so many things that we can do, but have to be on the back line. Yeah, I'll talk to you about some of them off the air. But so what have you learned about implementing technology in practices that resist change?
So my whole career, as I've been coaching and training, I've always been super sensitive to like what technology do you have and how you're using it in your practice. So that piece has been very easy for me because I've always tried to incorporate that into practices. You're paying for it, you got to use it. So right now, like what I'm facing, what I'm seeing people face, we actually lost a client because of this. And it's because of what the insurance companies have done with that 2FA. And more are coming. Delta was supposed to release it in October. I'm guessing that's happening now too and stuff. They're just trying to keep people out so they don't end up like some of these others who've been hacked and had these huge breaches. So have to understand in this line of change that it means that everything may not be perfect in your eyes to the way it works, but it's not because that technology isn't working. It's because of what else it's up against. So change is hard, right? We all know that change is hard. But when you look at what this can accomplish for you or what other technology that you already have in your practice can accomplish for you, you know, there's the reward. And like with our company, I will help you with the workflow and how to work around with it and help with that. I'm sure other companies would too if you ask them. You know, it's just that do they have somebody who knows dentistry inside of there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things you brought up earlier made me think we need to definitely make this point. A lot of you are upset because we are not yet offering DIVA for your PMS, or we don't fully support them yet. There's a reason behind that. We mentioned earlier about different types of databases and different ways that PMSs process information, and that's a part of it. A part of it is also that certain dental PMSs, and I'm certain that people will pick up what we're laying down here without me having to mention them by name, but those PMSs which we have mentioned are very difficult, are also difficult to work with, and they will literally sabotage their vendors because they've decided that they want to eventually make a program that does what we do. And so we don't play that game. I'd personally just love to see everyone switch to open dental. It would be so much better for them and for the industry as a whole. But those things are coming, and actually they're coming soon if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So platforms that we completely support right now, and platforms that you know are coming within 3 months, and your recommendations as whether to start immediately with DIVA Basic if you're on one of those 3-month or 6-month roadmaps, or DIVA Advanced Pro if they're not.
So right now, DIVA Advanced Pro has been released for Open Dental and CareStack. They're the easiest two that we work with. And then next up in line are the clouds. So Oryx, Curve, Ascend. Those are my most common, I think. And then third in line are going to be Dentrix and EagleSoft because the programming is just different for them because they're server-based in there. Other PMSs that could be coming down the line, and it just depends on how much there is, because it takes us a month. 1 month, I learned this because we were getting ready to build to some specialty PMSs. So it's 1 month for us to build the integration to be able to extract data from the PMS so that DIVA can work. But in the meantime, we can have the office send us data extracted into a spreadsheet, and DIVA can still do the work for them and drop it into the dashboard. And then they have to import it. It's like DIVA Basic. I don't know which ones that they have. Essentially, I haven't talked to anybody that I've got other PMSs other than PBS Endo. It's not working. Win OMS we are working on right now. So we're trying to help with some of these specialty programs that don't integrate with anybody. That's the beautiful thing about DIVA. That piece isn't. We're not bound by that piece of it because of the way we work.
So a couple things that are on the roadmap that I can speak to. I'm not certain when this feature will be available, but it is on the roadmap. Currently, DIVA processes so much information about individual patients and across so many different different PMSs, but so I'm leaving that in there too. So we process so many different PPOs and so many different codes through each different PPO that hold that right real tight. There you go. That we see trends in the dental market 6 months before anyone else sees them. And so that means 6 months before dental insurance is going to drop some sort of nasty bomb on you, and make no mistake. And people may get upset, and I may actually get fussed at by a couple of the other owners for saying this. Dental insurance is your enemy.
Oh, yeah.
Dental insurance is ideal patient, is willing to pay their premiums, and has one healthy tooth in their mouth, and it's not perio involved. Because as soon as they pull that tooth, they're going to stop paying their premiums. Dental insurance is made to keep your money for as long as possible and to invest it, and that is how they make their money. That and by denying claims. Make no mistake, that is their business model. My intention in starting this is to help to combat that for our patients and for our doctors, because that is who I work for. And Tonya, I know you feel the same.
100%.
This is our company culture. So we are attempting to create projections for dental trends, as well as creating advanced models. And this one's far down in the future, but we're already working on it. That will help us to understand why patients don't say yes to treatment in specific practices, or why claims are denied in across the board in different practices, to give you best standards so that you can not have claims denied. All that's based on data.
Yeah, and one of the things DIVA does right now that I think is really cool is, and this is in all of them because it's part of the verification and you see it on the dashboard, is when DIVA verifies and a plan's active, but the data that you have in your PMS is different than what's on the breakdown, it puts in yellow this alert like, hey, look at me. And it's telling you what's wrong, what's different, so that way that you can have clean claims. So if you're looking at that stuff and you're going, oh, the last name doesn't match. 20 years ago, they didn't care about last names. They will, stepchildren, if you have them in as child instead of other, can trigger them to deny a claim because it's not the right relationship. So they're looking for any reason they can to deny that claim. And I love it that DIVA gives you those hints so that you can look at it and you can fix those things. Now, some of this stuff, like one of the samples I use, it says, there's a Delta Dental up there, and it's like, yeah, but you're not on the right Delta Dental. You need to be on this one instead. Well, in our Advanced Pro version, DIVA will switch that for you. It's going to tell you that, but DIVA is also going to fix it because it's building those group plans for you, or it's editing your group plan. And it's going to give you that best practice, because what DIVA wants is for that claim to get paid the first time. And by the way, I don't know if I can say this or not, but it's going to be, I heard the end of the year, I'm going to guess early 26, payment posting, and already with Open Dental, we can submit claims with that. So we're going to be able to help your whole RCM just function without babysitting it, and then giving back, here's the pieces that your team needs to do to, again, make that easier and with no mistakes. Could you imagine balancing every day your EFTs and your payments, making sure everything balances? That's one thing I see that never gets done in dental practices. And so that that the amount of money your PMS is reporting matches what the accountants show you have in the bank.
Stop taking EFTs. Stop
Really?
it.
I love this. Tell me why.
Well, because the bank that processes the EFTs is owned by the insurance companies, and they charge you a merchant fee, and they collect it in addition to the write-off that you've already agreed to.
Well, and I knew they
And
did
it
that on the
makes me
VCCs.
angry.
Yeah. And they're forcing everybody's hands. They're making people switch into these and go that route. I mean, and again, I mean, what they just said last year, Delta Dental's CEO got like a $9 million bonus. Where did he get that from? All the money that people didn't use.
And I may be mistaking the two because they didn't have EFTs and virtual credit cards whenever I was practicing. And I didn't, well, they did, but I didn't have to deal with them because I was fee for service by that point. But yeah, paper checks or ACH and they pay the fees. But
yeah, the VCCs are bad, and more of them since Zealous is processing for a ton of them, and they're forcing you. They're telling you that you can't have a check, or they're going to start charging for checks.
Well, there needs to be a legal battle there because cash is the only legal tender that is recognized by the United States government, and anybody who refuses to pay you in cash or to accept cash is actually breaking a federal law.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't it though?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because we want to track every little thing that, but yeah, these fees, when they don't realize how much these fees are adding up. And when you're in network, how much it's affecting your bottom line. Because we're looking at the full credit card or the full insurance fee, and you're not seeing that 3.5%. Not that I'm saying that you should put that on your ledger because it's an accounting nightmare for your patients, but the cost of doing business, it's eating into those profits big time.
No, absolutely. Yeah, most dentists are only getting 30% profit margin in their practices, or 25% profit margin. That means you can only have 1% fees tacked on 25 times before you're owing money for doing your job.
Well, and that's why a lot of offices, like when I go in and start evaluating things, I'm like, you're paying your patients to walk in the door because you're losing money on these PPOs based on how much the reimbursement rate is and what your overhead is.
I've got a little presentation I'll show you after we're done here. I made a spreadsheet that actually calculates the difference between being in network and out of network and makes the assumption that you lose half your patients. And so I'll show you how I ran the probabilities.
I love it.
Since you're a numbers chick, you'll get it. But basically, it tells you if you should drop an insurance or not.
And I'm going to tell you, if you do it the right way, if you follow a plan to get out of network, you can lose less than half of your patients. A lot of times people,
absolutely.
And still what you're going to make less patients. Okay, easier day for our team. We're not running on burnout. We're getting paid better money. We don't need that volume. Or there's a whole other patient base for an associate sitting right there for you.
If we can get this okayed by legal, I'm going to give away that spreadsheet.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I think that's powerful. So in closing, we've got a lot of things coming. I think 2027. The claims processing.
Okay.
We should be able to actually add attachments automatically.
Awesome.
So
I've had a lot of people ask me that question, and my answer is, well, if you put it in the right way, DIVA can read, like, you put in that this is the lower right. We're doing tooth number 19. So it's great to know that that is absolutely coming.
Well, think about it this way. And this, whenever I brought it up to the devs, they were like, I said, okay, so you've got date of service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some things require certain records to be taken on date of service, and some things require them to be taken within 2 weeks, and some things require them within 3 months. So you just attach that to the code. If it's, perio and it's date of service, then you just look for the perio chart that's date of service and automatically attach that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the one problem we're going to have is the AI recognizing whether the perio chart was correctly filled out.
Yeah, and that's because we skip that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how you get paid, because you can't diagnose without knowing whether or not they have horizontal and vertical bone loss, and disease isn't disease without bleeding.
And I see a lot of offices that, they'll pay part of a claim and then they won't pay that, and they just close it and they write it off and don't send in the information that they need. I mean, you're losing money hand over fist. And the doctor probably has no idea because nobody recognizes that, hey, I need to leave this part of the claim open, resubmit it with that information. I see that a ton. Once you close that claim, you've lost the ability to track it. And in these PMSs, they make it easy to split that piece off so you can keep it open and track that. So that's something that I see a ton too. Nice to know that DIVA will be able to help in those situations, and it'll recognize that when it's posting payments.
Absolutely. So one of the things I do want to bring up is that my partner in crime here is Dr. Travis Campbell, who is one of the nation's, if not the world's, leading experts on dental insurance. And we are making sure that everything that we're doing is utterly and completely by the book.
Yep.
Because we want to keep you guys safe, because we are you guys. So if you have any questions, you should definitely give Tonya a ring. And you have well, actually, you're going to cut off part of this interview, and you're going to give them a little scheduling link and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But even if you go to dentalinsuranceai.com and click book a demo, you will get right into my calendar.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming out, and
Thanks
I can't wait to nerd out over my spreadsheets in a couple minutes with you. And guys, thank you for listening to this really long-winded discussion about practice management and dental insurance and my baby, DIVA.
Yeah, I'm so excited that I get to be part of the team because, it's something that's been a huge passion of mine for a very long time, and to know that I'm part of something, and honestly knowing that you and Dr. Campbell were involved in it as well. I love that we have that tech side, but we also have the dentist side cover. So we're looking at it from the perspective of how is this helping dentists? How is it helping practices? Because I think sometimes that's missed in companies.
A lot of times they're building a solution in search of a problem, and we know the problems.
Yeah.
We're just trying to fix them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Guys, until next time, this is Doc Huffpower, and I'm out.
And watch me educate. Yeah, we been could've started, but it's never late. Do it for my kids, yeah, let's set it straight. Do it for your kids, gotta set it straight. It's time to regulate. We need change now.